When you turn 18 in the foster system, they give you a black trash bag for your belongings and directions to the nearest homeless shelter. My sister and I got something different: a key to a dead sheriff's office and a mystery our grandmother died protecting. What we found inside would prove that sometimes the law does not die. It just waits for someone brave enough to enforce it. The air in Ms. Patricia Lund's office always smelled like stale coffee and failure. It was a scent I had come to associate with endings. For 10 years, it had been the smell of quarterly check-ins, of progress reports that were never quite good enough, of being a case number instead of a person. On this particular morning, my last morning, it smelled like a final judgment being passed down from a universe that had already made up its mind about kids like us. She slid the manila folder across her gray metal desk with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. It stopped just short of my hands, which were clasped tightly in my lap to keep them from shaking. The folder was thin. 10 years of my life, condensed into maybe 20 pages. Cole, as you know, tomorrow is your 18th birthday. Her voice was flat, mechanical. She had delivered this speech so many times the words had lost all meaning. That means you are legally an adult. The state's obligation to you is concluded. Obligation concluded. The words were so clean, so sterile. They were precise little cuts on a wound that had been open since I was 8 years old. Beside me, my sister Iris shifted in her plastic chair. She was 17, 11 months younger than me, but our case files had been linked from the beginning. Where I went, she went, and I was going nowhere. "What about Iris?" I asked. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "She's still a minor." Ms. Lund sighed, the kind of heavy exhale that fogged up the plexiglass barrier between us. "An unfortunate complication, with no other next of kin willing to take responsibility and no available beds in the group home system for a 17-year-old. She paused, let the sentence hang in the air like an axe waiting to fall. "Until then, she is technically your responsibility." My responsibility. My wonderful, sharp-minded, too observant for her own good little sister was now my problem to solve with $400 and no plan beyond surviving the next 48 hours. We were a package deal. We always had been. From the day they took us out of our grandmother's house, screaming and confused, we had made a silent pact. We were a two-person life raft in an ocean of temporary homes, rotating caseworkers and adults who learned our names just long enough to forget them. "So we're out," I said. It was not a question. "Your transitional housing stipend has been loaded onto this debit card." She pushed a thin piece of plastic across the desk. $400. That should cover a security deposit at a motel or your first week at a transitional living facility. There is a list of resources in your packet. The packet, the famous packet, a bundle of photocopied pamphlets about shelters that were always full and job training programs with 6-month waiting lists and phone numbers that rang forever into automated voice systems. It was the institutional equivalent of thoughts and prayers. I looked at Iris. Her face was pale, her dark hair falling across her eyes like a curtain she could hide behind. She was staring at her worn sneakers, those cheap canvas things from the donation bin at the community center. She was pretending to be somewhere else. I knew that look. It was the same expression she had worn the day the police officer handed her a stuffed bear at our old house, right before his partner put our mother in the back of a squad car. She was building walls inside herself, brick by silent brick. I had to be strong. I had always had to be the strong one. "There is one other thing." Ms. Lund's tone shifted slightly, like she was reading from a different script. She pulled out another envelope from her desk drawer. This one was different. It was old, yellowed with time, sealed with a thick wax stamp that had cracked around the edges. It looked like something from a different era entirely. This arrived at our office approximately 1 week ago from a law firm in Redemption Bluff, Montana. It was forwarded through several channels before reaching us. It is addressed to you. She pushed it across the desk. Apparently it concerns your grandmother's estate. My grandmother. The word felt foreign in my mouth. Ruth Brennan was less a person and more a ghost in my memory, a faded photograph, a name in a case file. We had lived with her when we were very small, before the state decided she was too old, too poor, too alone to raise two traumatized children. I remembered a warm kitchen, the smell of bread baking, a voice singing old songs I could not quite recall. Then she was gone and we were told she had moved away. Later, we learned she had died 2 years ago in a state nursing home. We were not invited to the funeral. There was no estate, we were told. Nothing left behind but medical debt and an empty room. We were told there was nothing, I said, looking up at Ms. Lund. Clerical errors happen, she replied with a shrug that contained absolutely no emotion. People fall through the cracks. Sometimes they fall back through. Open it. My hands were shaking as I broke the wax seal. It crumbled like dried blood. Inside was a single folded piece of paper, thick and expensive, the kind of stationery that cost real money. The letterhead read Anderson and Associates, attorneys at law, Redemption Bluff, Montana. The letter was brief and formal, legal language that twisted around itself in ways designed to be confusing, but certain phrases jumped out in stark, impossible clarity. Estate transfer, deed of property, condition of inheritance. Stapled to the back was a photocopy of a deed. I read it once, twice, 3 times, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. Item: former county sheriff substation number 9 and appurtenant land, 40 acres, located at 1847 Keller Road, Redemption Bluff, Montana. Purchase price, $5. Purchaser, Ruth Brennan. Transfer upon death to Cole Brennan upon reaching age of majority. Conditions: inheritor must take physical possession of property within 72 hours of 18th birthday and demonstrate intent to occupy or restore. Failure to comply results in property reverting to county ownership. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. A sheriff's station, 40 acres, $5. It was the most absurd thing I had ever read. Is this real? Iris finally spoke, leaning over to read the document. Her voice was barely a whisper. Is this actually real? Ms. Lund took the paper and examined it with the kind of clinical detachment she brought to everything. After a long moment, she handed it back. According to this, your grandmother purchased a derelict county property through some kind of municipal reclamation program in 2015. She paid $5 and committed to 9 years of advance property taxes. The deed transfers to you automatically upon your 18th birthday, which is tomorrow. She paused, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw something that might have been respect flicker across her face. It appears to be legitimate. There has to be a catch, I said, because there was always a catch. She tapped a paragraph near the bottom of the page. Here. You must take possession within 72 hours. That means you need to be physically present at the property by this time 3 days from now. And you must demonstrate intent to restore or occupy. If you fail to meet these conditions, the property reverts to county control and will likely be sold or demolished. 72 hours. We were in Seattle. Redemption Bluff, Montana was over 600 miles away. We had $400, 2 duffel bags, and a bus schedule. And we owned a sheriff's station that our dead grandmother had bought for the price of a fast food meal. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the first flicker of something that felt remotely like hope that I had experienced in a decade. I looked at Iris. The walls in her eyes had crumbled. In their place was a tiny, wild spark of something I had not seen in years. Possibility. A sheriff's station, she said slowly. A real building, land, ours. Ours, I repeated. The word tasted strange. We had never owned anything. Everything we had ever touched belonged to someone else, was borrowed, was temporary. Ms. Lund cleared her throat. I should inform you that according to the notes from the law firm, the property has been abandoned since 1998. It likely needs significant repairs. There is no guarantee of utilities or habitability. We have lived in worse, I said. She could not argue with that. She had read our file. She knew about the group home with black mold in the walls, the foster family who kept us in an unheated garage, the emergency shelter where we slept on cots surrounded by 50 strangers. One more thing, Ms. Lund said. She reached into her desk and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. This was also in the envelope. I unwrapped it carefully. It was a single brass key, old and tarnished, attached to a paper tag. The tag had 4 words written in faded blue ink that I recognized as my grandmother's handwriting. For the front door. We stood up. Our meeting was over. Our childhood was over. Our life in the system was officially concluded. Ms. Lund walked us to the door. At the threshold, she paused. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, the bureaucratic armor cracking just enough to let a sliver of humanity through. Listen, I have seen a lot of things in this job. Most of them are not good. This, she gestured at the envelope in my hand, this is unusual, but it is something. Do not waste it. She did not say good luck. She did not say she believed in us. But she held my gaze for 3 seconds longer than necessary, and in those 3 seconds, I understood that she had just given us the only blessing she was capable of giving. We walked out into the gray Seattle drizzle. The city smelled like wet concrete and exhaust fumes and 10,000 people living on top of each other. But the air felt different somehow. The world had not changed, but we had. We were no longer wards of the state. We were property owners. We were homeless and terrified and completely unprepared. And we owned a crumbling sheriff's station in a town I could not find on a map. Standing on that rain-slicked sidewalk with the weight of that brass key in my pocket, I had no idea we were standing at the edge of the rest of our lives. I did not know that the key would not just open a door, but unlock a past that would explain everything. A past that would reveal why our parents really died. A past that would give us something we had never had before. A reason to fight. The Greyhound station was a cathedral of desperation. People sleeping on hard plastic benches, crying babies, muffled announcements about departures to places that sounded either hopeful or like the absolute end of the line. For us, Redemption Bluff was both. I stood at the ticket counter with our $400 and calculated the cost of 2 one-way tickets to the middle of Montana. The woman behind the plexiglass looked at me with eyes that had seen this exact scene 1,000 times before. Young person, duffel bag, one-way ticket. She knew what it meant. 2 to Redemption Bluff, Montana, I said. She typed slowly, her long nails clicking against the keyboard. Gonna be a transfer in Missoula. Total trip time is about 16 hours. Leaves in 40 minutes. Arrives tomorrow afternoon. How much? $210. I watched half of our entire net worth disappear in a single transaction. The receipt printed out with a mechanical whir that sounded like the closing of a door. We now had less than $200 to start a new life, to fix a building, to eat. The absurdity of it threatened to crush me. I bought us 2 hot dogs and 2 sodas from a vendor, spending another $12 on what might be our last real meal for days. We ate in silence on top of our duffel bags, which contained everything we owned in the world. 3 changes of clothes each. A few books Iris refused to leave behind. A photograph of our parents that was so faded their faces were barely visible. A stuffed rabbit that Iris had owned since she was 4 and would never admit she still slept with. Iris kept turning the brass key over and over in her small hands. The tarnished metal caught the fluorescent terminal lights, throwing small reflections onto the dirty floor. "Do you think she knew?" Iris asked suddenly. Her voice was barely audible over the ambient noise of the station. "Grandma Ruth, do you think she knew this would happen, that we would get kicked out?" I did not have an answer. The grandmother I remembered was a shadow, a feeling more than a person. Kind eyes, gentle hands, the smell of cinnamon and old books. Not a planner, not a strategist, just an old woman who had loved us and lost us. "I do not know," I said honestly. "Maybe she just hoped. Maybe this was her version of a prayer." The bus smelled like industrial cleaner and diesel fuel, and the accumulated sadness of 1,000 journeys just like ours. We found 2 seats together near the back, next to a window that was scratched and fogged. As the bus pulled away from the terminal, I watched Seattle's skyline shrink in the dirty glass until it was just a smudge of light against the encroaching darkness. I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. Relief that we were leaving, that we were escaping the city that had chewed us up and spit us out. Terror because we were truly alone now, heading towards something we could not see, could not understand, could not prepare for. No safety net, no caseworker, no emergency number to call, just a piece of paper and a key and a promise made by a dead woman we barely remembered. The bus drove through the night. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I knew, Iris was shaking my shoulder gently. "Cole, look." I opened my eyes. The world outside had transformed completely. The endless gray rain of Seattle had been replaced by something I had only seen in pictures. The sky was massive, a dome of deep blue just beginning to lighten at the eastern edge. Stars were still visible, thousands of them, a brilliant spray of light against the darkness. We had been driving for hours, and the landscape had changed from rain forest to mountains to something else entirely. High plains, rolling hills covered in dried grass, barbed wire fences stretching to infinity, the occasional cluster of buildings that might have been a ranch or a farm, lights glowing warm against the cold pre-dawn dark. It was the most beautiful and the most lonely thing I had ever seen. I checked my phone, 4:30 in the morning. We were due in Redemption Bluff at 8, 3.5 more hours. Iris pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "It is so empty," she whispered. She did not say it with fear. She said it with wonder. For kids who had spent their entire lives being watched, monitored, counted, and cataloged, the emptiness was not threatening. It was freedom. The sun rose slowly, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. We passed through small towns that looked like they were barely holding on, boarded-up storefronts, faded signs, churches with leaning steeples, gas stations with pumps so old they had mechanical dials instead of digital screens. This was a different America, one that existed in the spaces between cities, in the quiet places where people still knew their neighbors' names and where history moved slower, and where the past was not something you forgot but something you carried. The bus pulled into Redemption Bluff just after 8 in the morning. The station was not really a station at all. It was a covered bench next to a gravel parking lot on the edge of what might generously be called a town. A wooden sign read Redemption Bluff, population 823. Someone had crossed out the 8 and written a 7 in marker. The driver opened the doors with a hydraulic hiss. "Last stop, folks, Redemption Bluff." We were the only ones who got off. The cold hit me like a physical blow. The air was sharp and clean, so different from Seattle's damp heaviness. It smelled like dirt and pine trees and wood smoke and something else I could not name. Space, maybe. Distance. The bus pulled away, its engine fading into the morning quiet, and then we were alone. Completely, utterly alone. The silence was so profound it buzzed in my ears. Iris looked around, taking in the view. A single paved road led into town. Beyond that we could see the outline of buildings, a church steeple, what looked like a grain elevator, a few houses scattered on the hills. "Well," she said, pulling her thin jacket tighter against the cold, "this is it." We started walking. The road into town was cracked asphalt, weeds growing through the gaps. We passed a faded sign that read "Welcome to Redemption Bluff, home of the 1987 state champions." The sign did not say what they were champions of. Main Street appeared after about half a mile of walking. It was a single block of brick buildings, most of them 2 stories tall, most of them empty. Boarded windows, faded paint, for sale signs that looked like they had been up for years. There was a post office, a small grocery store, a hardware store with a hand-painted sign that read Vogel's Hardware and Supply. And there, parked in front of the hardware store, was an old man unlocking the front door. He was tall and lean, probably in his late 60s, wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap with a logo I did not recognize. He looked up as we approached, took in our duffel bags and our young faces and our obvious confusion. "You kids look lost," he said. His voice was rough, weathered, kind. "We are looking for 1847 Keller Road," I said. The old man stopped moving. His hand froze on the door handle. He turned slowly to face us fully, and I saw something shift in his expression. Surprise, recognition, something that might have been fear. The old sheriff's station, his voice had changed. It was quieter now, careful. "Why?" "We inherited it," Iris said, "from our grandmother, Ruth Brennan." The silence that followed was so heavy I could feel it pressing against my chest. The old man stared at us for what felt like an eternity. Then he removed his cap and ran a weathered hand through his white hair. "Ruth Brennan's grandkids," he said, almost to himself. "Jesus Christ, you are Ruth's grandkids." It was not a question. "You knew her?" I asked. "Knew her?" He let out a long, slow breath. "Son, everyone knew Ruth. She worked at the county clerk's office for 23 years. He paused, seemed to be calculating something in his head. "And you say you inherited the station." I pulled out the deed and showed it to him. He read it slowly, his lips moving slightly as he processed the words. When he finished, he handed it back and looked at us with an expression I could not quite read. Pity, maybe, or respect. "My name is Hank Vogel," he said. "I own this hardware store, and I knew your grandmother well." He paused again, weighing his words. "If you are going out to that station, you are going to need some things, and you are going to need a ride. It is another 4 miles, and it is all uphill." "We do not have much money," I said. "I am not asking for money," Hank replied. "Come on. I will close up and drive you out there. You kids should not be walking that road on your first day." He disappeared into his store for a moment, then returned with a thermos and a paper bag. "Coffee and some biscuits from this morning. You look like you could use a hot meal." The kindness, so unexpected and so complete, made my throat tighten. I managed a thank you that came out rougher than I intended. Hank's truck was an old Ford, probably from the 70s, with rust spots and a cracked windshield, but an engine that started on the first try. We climbed into the cab, our duffel bags in the bed. The truck smelled like motor oil and coffee and hard work. As we drove out of town, Hank was quiet. He kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror, like he was trying to reconcile what he was seeing with something he remembered. We passed through more open country, pastures with a few cattle, barbed wire fences. The road turned to gravel and began to climb. In the distance, I could see mountains, their peaks still white with snow even though it was late spring. Then Hank slowed the truck and pointed. "There," he said quietly, "that is it." At first I could not tell what I was looking at. Then it resolved into focus. A low brick building, maybe 1,000 square feet, with a flat roof and barred windows. Two vehicles were parked in front, both on cinder blocks, both rusted beyond recognition. A Ford Bronco and a sedan that might have once been white. Behind the building, rolling grassland stretched for what looked like miles. 40 acres, our 40 acres. And there, above the front door, faded but still visible, was a sign. County Sheriff, Substation 9. We pulled to a stop in front of the building. I could see it more clearly now. The bars on the windows were bent in places. The door, which was steel-painted dark green, had pockmarks in the metal, bullet holes. Hank saw me looking. "That was the night Tom Keller died," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Official story was he killed himself, but Tom was left-handed. The bullet entered his right temple. Nobody ever questioned it. Nobody ever investigated it. And 3 weeks later, they closed the substation and moved all operations to the county seat." "Who is Tom Keller?" Iris asked. "Was," Hank corrected gently. "Sheriff Tom Keller was the last man to work out of that building. He was also the best man I ever knew. He died in September of 1998. He paused, stared at the building. He was investigating something, something big, and somebody killed him for it." The way he said it, with such quiet certainty, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Hank put the truck in park but did not turn off the engine. "Listen," he said, turning to face us fully. "I do not know why Ruth bought this place. I do not know what she told you or what you are expecting to find. But I need you to understand something. There are people in this county who do not want anyone poking around this old station. There are secrets here. Dangerous ones." "What kind of secrets?" I asked. "The kind that get people killed," Hank said simply. "Tom Keller found something. He was going to expose it, and they murdered him and made it look like suicide. Your grandmother knew. She worked in the county clerk's office. She had access to records. She knew what Tom was investigating, and after he died, she kept looking. She kept gathering evidence. Then one day she just disappeared, went into some kind of program, left town. We thought she was dead until about 9 years ago, when this property went up for auction and she bought it." "Why would she buy it?" Iris asked. Hank looked at the building, then back at us. "Because she was protecting something. She was keeping it from being demolished. She was waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you," Hank said quietly. "For someone to come back. For someone who had a right to the truth." We sat in silence. The engine idled. The morning sun was higher now, warming the cab. "You do not have to do this," Hank said. "You could turn around right now. Take what little money you have and start over somewhere else. Somewhere safe." I looked at Iris. She looked back at me. I could see the question in her eyes, and I could see the answer too. "We are already here," I said, "and we have nowhere else to go." Hank nodded slowly, like he had expected this answer. "All right then. Let me help you get started. I will bring some supplies out later. Water, food, some basics. You are going to need them." He drove away a few minutes later, leaving us standing in front of the sheriff's station with our duffel bags and our key, and a warning we did not fully understand yet. The key was cold in my hand. The building loomed in front of us, silent and waiting. It looked abandoned, forgotten, like a piece of history that the world had decided to leave behind. But it was ours. I walked up the 3 concrete steps to the front door. The brass doorknob was green with age. The keyhole was clogged with dirt and rust. I had to wiggle the key, pushing hard, feeling the mechanism resist. For a moment, I thought it would not work, that this entire journey had been for nothing. Then, with a groan of protesting metal that sounded like it came from the center of the earth, the lock turned. The click was loud in the morning quiet. I pushed the door. It swung inward on hinges that shrieked like something dying. A slice of darkness opened into the morning light. The smell hit us first. Not just age and dust, but something deeper. The ghost scent of old cigarette smoke, stale coffee, sweat, fear. The smell of human presence long faded but not entirely gone. I stepped inside. Iris followed, so close I could feel her hand gripping the back of my jacket. The door swung shut behind us, cutting off the sunlight, plunging us into a gray twilight. We stood in a small reception area. A high wooden counter separated the public space from the office area beyond. A single wooden bench was bolted to the wall, probably where people once sat waiting to report crimes or post bail. A calendar hung on the wall, frozen in time. September 1998. The photograph showed a generic mountain landscape, some lake I did not recognize. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. It coated every surface like gray snow, undisturbed for 26 years. I walked around the counter into the main office space. Two metal desks sat facing each other. Small metal nameplates were still attached to the fronts. One read Deputy R. Alvarez, the other read Sheriff T. Keller. Sheriff Keller's desk was cluttered even in abandonment. Papers scattered across the surface. A coffee cup with a dark ring of residue at the bottom. An old black rotary phone. Paper clips. A stapler. Everything preserved exactly as it had been left. Deputy Alvarez's desk was almost empty by comparison. Clean. Minimal. Like someone who kept their work life organized and separate. There was a hallway leading to the back of the building. Iris and I walked down it slowly, opening doors. A bathroom with a stained toilet and a sink hanging half off the wall. An evidence room with empty shelves and filing cabinets, all of them hanging open and completely empty. Someone had cleared them out long ago. A holding cell. The door was heavy steel with a small barred window at eye level and a slot for passing food trays. I pulled the handle and it swung open with a deep, resonant clang. Inside was a narrow space, maybe 8 feet by 10. A metal cot was bolted to the wall. A combination toilet and sink sat in the corner. The walls were concrete, painted institutional green. Scratches and graffiti covered every surface. Tally marks, names, dates, curses. "I do not like it," Iris said quietly. "It feels sad." She was right. The whole building felt sad. It was a container for forgotten stories, for bad days and worse nights, for all the small and large failures of human nature that required the intervention of law. At the end of the hall was one more door, larger than the others. A simple brass plate read Sheriff. I opened it. The office was bigger than I expected. A window faced the mountains in the distance. A large wooden desk dominated the room, solid and heavy. The leather chair behind it was cracked and split like a dry riverbed. A filing cabinet stood against one wall. On the wall itself, photographs. Tom Keller in uniform, young and serious. Commendations. A family photo. A pretty woman, a teenage girl, and Tom, all smiling. A map of the county covered another wall, colored pins stuck in various locations. This was the seat of power in this small kingdom, the place where one man had tried to hold back the darkness. I tried the desk drawers, all locked. I searched for a key, found nothing. Iris was examining the family photograph. She lifted it off the wall carefully, turned it over. Taped to the back was a small brass key and a note written in blue ink. The handwriting was shaky, elderly. "Start here." It was signed with a single initial, R. "Ruth, our grandmother. My hands were shaking as I peeled the key free. It was small, the kind that might fit a desk drawer or a small lock. I carried it back to the desk and tried the top drawer. The lock turned smoothly, like it had been waiting all these years for exactly this moment. The drawer slid open. Inside was a single item, a leather-bound journal worn and creased. The cover had initials embossed in fading gold. T.K. Thomas Keller. I lifted it out carefully like it might disintegrate in my hands. The pages were yellowed but intact. I opened to the first entry. The handwriting was sharp, masculine, hurried. January 1, 1997. New year. Same problems. Budget cuts mean we are down to just me and Rosa now. County wants to close us entirely, move everything to the main office. I am fighting it. People out here need local law enforcement. Someone who knows them. Someone they can trust. I flipped forward, scanning entries. Mundane police work, domestic disputes, drunk driving arrests, petty theft, the daily rhythm of rural law enforcement. Then in August of 1997, the tone changed. August 3, 1997. Met with James Brennan today. Ranch hand at the Circle P says he found something. Would not say what over the phone. Insists on meeting in person tomorrow. He is scared. I know that look. I have seen it too many times. James Brennan, my father's name. My hand started shaking so hard, I almost dropped the journal. Iris leaned in, reading over my shoulder. I turned the page. August 8, 1997. James did not show for our meeting. His wife Mary called this morning. He had a tractor accident, crushed chest, dead before the ambulance arrived. She is hysterical, says it was not an accident, says he told her he found buried documents on Pike property. Land deeds that do not match county tax records. I believe her. But without evidence there is nothing I can do. I told her to be careful, to stay quiet. I am worried. I could not breathe. The room was spinning. August 30, 1997. Mary Brennan is dead. Pills. Official ruling is accidental overdose. I know better. She knew something and they knew she knew. 2 kids now orphaned. Ruth Brennan, the grandmother, is taking them in. I told her to be careful, to keep those kids close and safe, to not ask questions. I am terrified for them. Iris made a small sound, like something breaking inside her. Keep reading, she whispered. I did. The entries over the following year detailed an investigation. Tom Keller piecing together a pattern. Water rights fraud. Forged deeds. Families forced off their land through intimidation and manufactured crises. A name appeared again and again. Vernon Pike. Pike Cattle and Land Company. Tom documented everything. Dates, names, properties. A conspiracy spanning decades. Families losing their ranches under suspicious circumstances. Wells mysteriously going dry. Livestock poisoned. Barns burned. And always Pike was there to buy the land at a fraction of its value. The final entry was dated September 15, 1998. I have enough now. Documents, testimonies, county records that prove the deeds were backdated and forged. Vernon Pike has been stealing land and water rights for over 20 years. When ranchers cannot water their cattle, they are forced to sell. He buys for pennies on the dollar. It is systematic theft. I am taking everything to the state attorney general tomorrow morning. I have made copies of all evidence and hidden them in 3 separate locations. If anything happens to me, Rosa knows where to look. Kate, if you are reading this someday, I am sorry. I love you more than anything. But some things are worth dying for. The law is worth dying for. The entry ended there. I found a newspaper clipping tucked into the back of the journal. The paper was brittle and yellow. The headline read, "Local Sheriff Found Dead in Apparent Suicide." Sheriff Thomas Keller, 46, was found deceased in his office at County Sheriff Substation 9 on September 16, 1998. Preliminary investigation indicates death by self-inflicted gunshot wound. Keller had served as a county sheriff for 18 years. He is survived by his wife Sarah and daughter Kate. Services pending. Iris was crying silently beside me. I felt numb, like my body had separated from my mind and was floating somewhere above this moment, watching from a distance. Our parents, murdered, not an accident, not an overdose, murdered because our father found evidence of a crime. And Sheriff Tom Keller, murdered too, made to look like suicide. 26 years of lies, 26 years of a town staying quiet. I heard a sound outside, a vehicle approaching. I walked to the window and looked out. A truck was pulling up, newer than Hank's, expensive looking. A man got out. He was wearing a suit, completely out of place in this rural setting. He walked to the front door and posted something, then got back in his truck and drove away without ever looking at the building. I went outside and ripped the notice off the door. It was printed on official county letterhead, a condemnation order. Property declared public nuisance and structural hazard. Owner has 30 days from date of posting to file complete remediation plan with county planning office and provide proof of liability insurance, and building permits or property will be seized under eminent domain and demolished at owner expense. Signed, County Commissioner R. Pike, per standard county procedure. Demolition scheduled for June 15, 2024. I stared at the signature line. R. Pike, Robert Pike. According to the local directory Hank had mentioned, that was Vernon Pike's son, the current county commissioner. The notice was dated yesterday, the day before my 18th birthday. The wording was careful, bureaucratic. Per standard county procedure, suggested this was routine paperwork, signed as part of his official duties without necessarily understanding the full context. But the timing was too precise to be coincidence. Someone had been watching, waiting. They knew we were coming. I counted the days. Exactly 31 days from now, they would bulldoze this building, destroy whatever evidence might still be hidden here, bury the truth one final time. Iris came outside and read the notice over my shoulder. They have been waiting 26 years to destroy this place, she said quietly. We just gave them the legal excuse they needed. I looked at the building, at the bullet holes in the door, at the mountains in the distance, at the vast empty land that stretched in every direction. We had 72 hours to claim this inheritance, 30 days to save it from destruction, $400 to our name, and a journal that proved our parents and a good sheriff had been murdered by someone powerful enough to make it all look like accidents and suicide. It was impossible, it was insane. And it was the only thing that mattered. I folded the condemnation notice and put it in my pocket next to the deed. What do we do? Iris asked. I looked at her, my sister, my responsibility, the only family I had left. We fight, I said. We find the evidence. We finish what they started. She nodded, no hesitation, no doubt. We went back inside the sheriff's station, our sheriff's station. The building was cold and dark and full of ghosts. But it was ours. And somewhere in these walls, hidden 26 years ago by a man who knew he was about to die, and a woman who spent the rest of her life protecting his legacy, was the truth. We just had to find it before they buried us along with it. My father found evidence that cost him his life. Sheriff Keller found more evidence that cost him his. Both men hid what they knew before they died. That first freezing night in that abandoned sheriff's station, we started looking. What we found was not just in filing cabinets. It was in the walls, under the floors, and in the one place they never thought to search, the place where truth is supposed to be kept. The temperature dropped fast once the sun went down. Montana cold is different from Seattle rain. It cuts through cloth and skin and settles in your bones like it plans to stay. By 7 in the evening, I could see my breath inside the sheriff's office. Iris was shivering despite wearing both her jackets at once. We had no heat, no electricity, no running water. The reality of our situation was settling in with the same ruthless efficiency as the cold. I found the camping stove in the supply closet where we had discovered it earlier. The fuel canister was half full, maybe enough for a week if we were careful. I got it working and heated a can of soup that Hank had left us, something with beans and ham that smelled better than it probably tasted. We ate it straight from the pot with 2 spoons, passing it back and forth, trying to make the warmth last. $400 would not last long. We needed supplies. We needed to understand what we were up against. We needed a plan. "Tomorrow we talk to Hank," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the empty building. "We learn about the town. We figure out what Sheriff Keller was investigating. We find the evidence he hid." Iris nodded, but her eyes were distant. She was processing, the way she always did, taking in information and arranging it in her mind like puzzle pieces. "They killed our parents," she said quietly. It was not a question, but a statement she needed to say out loud to make it real. "Yes." "And they killed Sheriff Keller." "Yes." "And they are going to try to kill us if we do not stop them." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her we would be safe, that we would be smart, that nothing bad would happen. But I had promised myself a long time ago I would never lie to her. "Probably," I said. She looked at me with those dark eyes that had seen too much for 17 years. "Good," she said. "Then we know what we are dealing with." We set up our sleeping bags in the sheriff's office because it was the warmest room. It had a south-facing window that had collected some heat during the day, and it was the smallest space, easier to warm with body heat. We pushed the 2 metal desks together to create a windbreak and laid our bags on the floor behind them. The building made sounds as it cooled, metal contracting, wood settling, the wind whistling through gaps in the window frames. Every sound felt amplified in the darkness, like the station itself was breathing. I could not sleep. Too cold. Too much adrenaline. Too many thoughts racing through my head like traffic I could not control. After an hour of lying there, I got up. I had a flashlight that Hank had given us, one of those heavy-duty tactical ones. I clicked it on and the beam cut through the darkness like a blade. I walked back out to the main office area. The 2 desks sat in their positions, frozen in time. I went to the wall where the map hung. All those colored pins, red for Pike owned, blue for resisting, black for the ones who had died or been forced out. I counted the black pins, 47 of them, 47 families over 30 years, each one a story of loss, each one a crime that had never been investigated. I heard movement behind me. Iris appeared, wrapped in her sleeping bag like a cocoon, shuffling in her socks. "Cannot sleep either," she said. We stood together looking at the map. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. The pins clustered around water sources, springs, creek confluences, places where the aquifer was close to the surface. "It is all about water," Iris said. "He has been stealing water rights." Sheriff Keller wrote about it in his journal. When ranchers cannot water their cattle, they have to sell. Pike buys cheap. Then he has both the land and the water. "Smart," she said, "evil but smart." She moved to the holding cell, drawn by some instinct I did not understand. I followed her. The cell door was still open from when we had explored earlier. She stepped inside and shone her flashlight on the walls. The scratches and graffiti were more visible in the harsh beam, names carved deep into the concrete, dates, curses, and along the far wall something else, tally marks, groups of 5 scratched into the paint. She counted them. 214 days, she said. Someone was counting their time here. Below the tally marks, scratched smaller and harder to see, was a message. She knelt down to read it, brushing dust away with her fingers. TK evidence under 3rd row, east wall, cell ARA. Tom Keller, I said. And RA must be Deputy Rosa Alvarez. The nameplate on the other desk. Iris looked around the cell. This is cell A and this is the east wall. The wall was brick, old and solid. The mortar between the bricks was crumbling in places, evidence of decades of moisture and neglect. I knelt beside her and ran my hand along the 3rd row of bricks from the floor. One of the bricks shifted slightly under my touch. Here, I said. We had no tools. I went back to the supply closet and found a spoon in the camping supplies. It was cheap metal, the kind that bends easily, but it was all we had. I used it to scrape at the mortar around the loose brick. It crumbled like dry mud, falling in small cascades to the concrete floor. It took 20 minutes of careful work. My hands were cramping and my knees ached from kneeling on the hard floor. But finally the brick came loose. I pulled it out and set it aside. Behind it was a hollow space, and in that space, wrapped in layers of thick plastic, was a package. My heart was hammering as I pulled it out. The plastic was brittle with age, cracking as I unwrapped it. Inside were 6 cassette tapes, the old-fashioned kind from before everything went digital. Each one was labeled in neat handwriting with a date and a single word. Copy number 2. Iris took one of the tapes and turned it over in her hands. If this is copy 2, where is copy 1? And where is copy 3? I added. We need a tape player, she said. The reality of that hit me. We were standing in an abandoned building with crucial evidence and no way to listen to it. We had found the first breadcrumb and already hit a wall. Tomorrow, I said, we will figure it out tomorrow. We slept a little after that, exhausted enough that even the cold could not keep us awake. I dreamed of my father, not the faded photograph version, but a real person, solid and present. He was trying to tell me something, but I could not hear the words. He kept pointing at the ground, at something buried, and then he was gone, and I was digging with my hands in frozen earth that would not give. I woke to gray dawn light filtering through the dirty windows. Iris was already up, sitting cross-legged on her sleeping bag, the cassette tapes arranged in front of her like artifacts in a museum. We need to go back to town, I said. We need to talk to Hank. The walk to Redemption Bluff took 45 minutes. The morning was clear and brutally cold. Our breath came out in clouds. The gravel road crunched under our boots. We passed empty fields, barbed wire fences, the occasional cluster of buildings in the distance. The land was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Hank's hardware store was just opening when we arrived. He was unlocking the front door, the same routine we had witnessed yesterday. When he saw us walking up the street, his face registered something between relief and concern. "You kids survived the night," he said. Barely, Iris replied. "Come inside, I have coffee." The hardware store smelled like sawdust and motor oil and old wood. It was warm, heated by a pot-bellied stove in the corner. Hank poured us coffee in chipped mugs, and we wrapped our hands around them, absorbing the heat. "We found something," I said. "Cassette tapes. Hidden in the holding cell, we need a tape player." Hank set his coffee cup down slowly. His face had gone pale. "Deputy Alvarez," he said. "Rosa, she must have hidden them." "You knew her." Everyone knew Rosa. She worked with Tom for 5 years. The day after he died, she resigned, packed up her family and left town within a week. Most people thought it was grief, but I always wondered if it was fear. "We need to listen to these tapes," I said. "Do you have a player?" Hank was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to a back room. I heard him moving things, opening boxes. He returned carrying an old boom box, the kind from the 80s with dual cassette decks and a handle on top. It was covered in dust. "This was Tom's," he said quietly. "He left it here a few days before he died. Asked me to hold on to it for him. Said he might need it. He never came back for it." I took the boom box carefully, like it might break. "Does it work?" Hank plugged it in. The power light flickered on. He pressed play on the tape deck and it whirred to life. "It works," he said. He went back into the storage room and returned with a brick of batteries. "Here, in case you need it without power." "How much do we owe you?" "Nothing. Consider it a loan from Tom. He would have wanted you to hear whatever is on those tapes." Hank also gave us supplies: bread, peanut butter, jerky, bottled water, a camping lantern, firewood. He loaded it all into a cardboard box and carried it to his truck. "I will drive you back," he said, "and I will stay. If those tapes say what I think they say, you should not be alone when you hear them." The drive back to the station was silent. Hank kept his eyes on the road, but his jaw was tight, his hands gripping the wheel harder than necessary. He was preparing himself for something. Back at the station, we set up in the sheriff's office. Hank built a fire in the pot-bellied stove we had not noticed before, hidden in the corner behind boxes. Within minutes, the room started to warm. It felt almost comfortable. I loaded the first tape into the boom box. The date on the label was August 10, 1997, 3 days after my father's death. I pressed play. There was a hiss of static, then voices. 2 men talking. The quality was poor, muffled, like it had been recorded from a distance or through something, but it was clear enough. The first voice was smooth, educated, the voice of someone used to being in charge. "The Brennan problem is handled. Tractor accident. Clean. The wife will not be an issue for long." A second voice, rougher, local accent. "You sure about that? She was making noise, talking to the sheriff." "She is unstable. Grief will do the rest. If not, we can help it along. Social services will take the kids. They will disappear into the system. No one will remember them in a year." The smooth voice again. "Good, and Keller?" "He is asking questions. Wants to see property records, water rights documentation." "Give him what he asks for. Make sure it is the altered set. The originals are secure. Locked in my safe. No one can prove the dates were changed." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Vernon," the second voice said, using a name that made my blood run cold. "Vernon Pike. How long can we keep this up?" "As long as necessary. Another 10 years and we will own every significant water source in 3 counties. When the drought comes, and it will come, we will be the only ones with water to sell. We will name our price." The tape ended with a click. The silence in the room was absolute. Hank had his head in his hands. Iris was crying silently, tears running down her face. I felt nothing. I was numb. Hearing them talk about my parents like they were problems to be solved, like we were loose ends to be tied up, it was too big to process. My mind simply refused. "There are 5 more tapes," I said. My voice sounded distant, disconnected. I loaded the second tape. This one was dated September 3, 1997. A different conversation. Vernon Pike and someone else discussing forged deeds, how to backdate documents, which county clerk to bribe to make the changes in the official records. They named names, amounts, specific properties. The third tape was Pike's lawyer, discussing strategies to force water rights surrenders, how to drill strategic wells that would drain neighboring properties, how to use environmental regulations against small ranchers who could not afford compliance. The fourth tape was the worst, Pike ordering acts of intimidation, burned barns, poisoned livestock, threats delivered to families in the middle of the night. He spoke about it like he was discussing crop rotation. Casual, matter of fact. The fifth tape was dated September 14, 1998, one day before Tom Keller's final journal entry, one day before he died. Two voices again, Pike and someone else. Keller knows, the second voice said. He has been gathering evidence for over a year. He is taking it to the state attorney general. Then we stop him, Pike said simply. How? Make it look like suicide. He has been stressed. Everyone knows he has been working too hard, tragic but understandable. The second voice hesitated. Vernon, that is a sheriff. That is murder. That is survival. We have too much invested. Too many years, too much money. One man is not going to destroy everything we have built. You understand? I understand. Good, make it clean. Tonight, I will make sure I am at the county commissioner's meeting. Visible, alibi established. The tape ended. I ejected it and loaded the sixth and final tape. This one had no date, just a label that read post. It was a recording of a phone conversation, Pike's voice and another man. It is done, the second man said, made it look like he shot himself, left the gun in his hand, right-handed shooter, left-handed victim, but the local coroner is ours. He will rule it suicide. Any complications? The deputy, Rosa Alvarez. She was not supposed to be there. She might have seen the truck. Deal with her. She has kids, a husband. I do not care. If she talks, eliminate the problem. If she stays quiet, leave her alone. Fear is cheaper than cleanup. She left town 3 days later, resigned, packed up and disappeared. Good. Anyone else asking questions? No one. The state attorney general's office never received any evidence. Whatever Keller had, it died with him. Make sure his office is cleaned out. Every file, every scrap of paper, I want it sterile. Already done. The tape ended. Hank stood up and walked to the window. His shoulders were shaking. He was an old man trying not to break down. I knew, he said, his voice rough. I knew Tom did not kill himself. I knew it in my gut, but hearing them plan it like it was nothing. These are copies, Iris said. Her voice was stronger than I expected. She had stopped crying and was examining the tapes. Deputy Alvarez made copies. Where is the original? And where is copy number 3? I added. Hank turned around. Rosa would have hidden the originals somewhere safe. Somewhere Pike could not get to them, but she would have made copies in case something happened to her. We need to talk to her, I said. Good luck, Hank replied. She has been gone for 26 years, could be anywhere, could be dead. Iris was already pulling out her phone. The cell service in Redemption Bluff was terrible. 1 bar on a good day, but it was enough. She opened a browser and started searching. Deputy Rosa Alvarez, she muttered. Montana, 1998. 10 minutes of searching and she found something. A news article from a Billings newspaper, dated 2005. Deputy Rosa Alvarez, formerly of Redemption Bluff, honored for 10 years of service with Billings Police Department. She is in Billings, Iris said, or she was 19 years ago. More searching, more articles. Rosa Alvarez retiring in 2015 after 25 years in law enforcement. A photograph of her at a retirement ceremony. Older, grayer, but recognizable from the nameplate that still sat on the desk in the other room. Iris found a white pages listing. R. Alvarez, Billings, Montana, a phone number. "We should call her," Iris said. "She will not talk to us," Hank said. "She has been silent for 26 years. She has her reasons." "We have to try," I said. I borrowed Hank's cell phone because it had better service. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times and I was about to give up when someone answered. "Hello," a woman's voice, cautious, with the practiced wariness of someone who had learned not to trust unexpected calls. "Is this Rosa Alvarez?" "Who was asking?" "My name is Cole Brennan. I am calling from Redemption Bluff, from Sheriff Keller's old office. I found your message." The silence that followed was so long I thought she had hung up. "Where are the tapes?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "Safe, I have them right here, all 6 of them from the holding cell." Another long silence. "How did you find them?" "Your message. 3rd row, east wall, cell A. My grandmother must have known. She left us clues." "Ruth Brennan," her voice softened. "Ruth is dead." "I know, she left us the station, left it to me and my sister." "Why?" "Because our parents were James and Mary Brennan. Because they were murdered by the same people who murdered Sheriff Keller. Because we deserve to know the truth." I heard her breathing, ragged and unsteady. "Where are the originals?" I asked. "Where is copy number 1? "Burned. Pike's men raided my house 3 days after Tom died. Beat my husband, tore the place apart, took everything they could find. They told me if I ever spoke about what I knew, they would kill my children, so I ran." "What about copy number 3? "What makes you think there is a 3? "You labeled these copy 2. Tom Keller was careful. He would have made multiple backups." She was quiet again, thinking. "Tom gave me 1 set to hide. He kept 1 set himself. Where, I do not know. He said if anything happened to him, I should run and never look back. So I did. I have been running for 26 years." "I need you to testify," I said. "We are building a case. We have the tapes. We have his journal. We need a witness." "I cannot. I have grandchildren now. If Pike finds out I am talking, he will kill them. He has already killed so many people. 1 more family means nothing to him." "He already killed my family," I said, and I was surprised at how steady my voice was. "He killed my father and my mother, and he is trying to kill the memory of Sheriff Keller. How many more families before someone stands up?" I heard her crying on the other end of the line. Soft, broken sounds. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry, but I cannot help you. I have to protect my family." She hung up. I stood there holding Hank's phone, feeling the weight of that rejection. Our first real lead to a living witness, and she was too scared to help. I could not blame her. Pike had taken everything from her too. He had weaponized her love for her family against her. Hank put a hand on my shoulder. "I understand, Rosa. I would have made the same choice. Hell, I did make the same choice. Pike came for my ranch in '95. Said my well was draining the aquifer. Complete lie, but he had the county inspector in his pocket. The inspector declared my operation in violation of water management regulations. I was facing $100,000 in fines and remediation costs. Then the barn burned. Electrical fire, they said. Lost 20 head of cattle in the panic that followed. My wife had a heart attack that night from the stress. She survived, but she was never the same. 3 months later, Pike offered to buy the ranch. 30 cents on the dollar, I took it. What choice did I have?" "Did your wife recover?" Iris asked gently. "She died a year later. Heart gave out. Doctor said it was a heart attack, but I know better. It was a broken heart. We built that ranch together. It was our whole life. Losing it killed her as surely as if Pike had put a gun to her head. He looked at the tape player, at the evidence we had spread across the desk. I should have fought, I should have stood with Tom, but I was scared. I had already lost my wife. I could not risk my own life too, so I stayed quiet. I have been living with that choice for 26 years. You are helping now, I said. Too little too late, but yes, I am helping now. Whatever you need, I am in. We spent the next hour going through everything we had. The journal, the tapes, the map on the wall. Hank filled in details, named names, confirmed suspicions. He knew the history of almost every black pin on that map, every family that had been forced out, every accident that was not really an accident. Vernon Pike was not just a land grabber. He was a serial killer who used economics and intimidation instead of weapons. The body count was in the dozens, spread over 30 years, hidden in suicides and accidents and sudden illnesses. I need to contact someone, I said. Someone who has the authority to do something about this. Who? Hank asked. The county sheriff is Pike's nephew. The state police have been compromised for years. The attorney general's office never received Tom's evidence for a reason. I was thinking about the family photograph in Tom's office, the teenage girl in the picture. Kate Keller, I said, Tom's daughter. She would have been 18 when he died. She is in her 40s now. What happened to her? Hank's face brightened slightly. Kate. She left Montana right after Tom's funeral. Her mother took her to Oregon. I lost touch with them after that. But I heard through the grapevine that Kate went to law school, became a prosecutor. Federal prosecutor if the rumors are true. Federal, I repeated. That means she has jurisdiction. If she will listen to a couple of foster kids with a wild story about her father's murder. She will listen, Iris said, because it is her father, because she deserves to know the truth as much as we do. I used Hank's computer in the back office to search. Kate Keller Morrison, I tried, adding her married name, federal prosecutor. It took several searches, but I found her. Assistant United States Attorney Kate Keller Morrison, District of Colorado, Environmental Crimes and Public Corruption Division. Her official photo showed a woman in her mid-40s with serious eyes and her father's determined jaw. I found her office email on the Department of Justice website. I sat at the computer and wrote the most important email of my life. Ms. Morrison, my name is Cole Brennan. I am writing from your father's old office at Sheriff Substation 9 in Redemption Bluff, Montana. I am currently living in the building my grandmother purchased to preserve evidence of crimes that occurred in 1998. Your father did not commit suicide. He was murdered. I have proof. I have recordings of the people who ordered his death discussing their plans. I have his journal detailing his investigation. I have testimony from people who were there. I understand if you do not believe me. I understand if you think this is a hoax or a cruel joke, but I am asking you to come here, to see what I have found, to hear what your father discovered. He died trying to expose the truth. You deserve to know what that truth is. Respectfully, Cole Brennan. I included my phone number and the address of the station. I hit send and sat back. Now we wait, Hank said. While we waited, Iris went back to examining the map on the wall. She was doing what she always did when she was processing, moving around, touching things, making connections. She stood in front of the map for 20 minutes just staring at it. Then she started tracing lines with her finger, connecting the red pins, following the pattern of Pike's acquisitions. Cole, she said quietly, come look at this. I went to stand beside her. She pointed at the map. All the properties Pike owns, they cluster around water sources, springs, creek confluences, places where the aquifer is shallow, but look at the pattern. There is a gap, one property that would complete the network. She traced a circle in the air around a specific area. The properties form a ring, but there is a hole in the center, right here. She tapped a spot on the map. It was unlabeled. "What is there?" I asked Hank. Hank came over and looked. His face went pale. "That is this property," he said. "The 40 acres attached to the sheriff's station. It sits right on top of the main aquifer recharge zone, the place where rainwater and snowmelt feed into the underground water system. Control that spot and you control the flow for everything downstream." Iris turned to look at me. "That is why Ruth bought it. That is why Pike wants to demolish it. It is not about destroying evidence. I mean, it is, but it is not just that. He needs this land. Without it, his water monopoly has a hole in it." Hank was nodding slowly, understanding dawning. If you control the recharge zone, you can restrict water flow to everyone downstream. You can create an artificial drought. Then you sell water from your own wells at whatever price you want. It is worth millions, tens of millions. "We are not just fighting to save a building," I said. "We are sitting on the linchpin of a 40-year conspiracy." "Exactly," Hank said. "And that makes you very dangerous to Vernon Pike. He has killed for less." The weight of that settled over us like a physical thing. We were not just uncovering history. We were threatening the present. Pike's entire empire, his entire future, depended on getting this property, and we were in his way. My phone buzzed, an email notification. I opened it with shaking hands. It was from Kate Keller Morrison. The message was brief. "I will be there tomorrow. Do not do anything until I arrive. Do not talk to anyone. Do not let anyone into that building. If what you say is true, you are in danger. Be careful, Kate." Tomorrow, she was coming tomorrow. I showed the email to Hank and Iris. Hank let out a long breath. "Tom's daughter is coming home," he said. "After 26 years, she is finally coming home." That night, we secured the building as best we could. Hank helped us board up the broken windows we had climbed through to enter. He brought deadbolts and installed them on the doors. He left us a baseball bat and a can of pepper spray, just in case. Before he left, he stood in the doorway and looked around the station one more time. "Tom would be proud of you kids," he said. "He spent his whole career trying to protect people. Now you are protecting his legacy. That means something." After he drove away, Iris and I sat in the sheriff's office with the camping lantern casting shadows on the walls. The tapes were lined up on the desk. The journal was open to Tom's last entry. The map with its telling pattern of pins watched us from the wall. "Tomorrow changes everything," Iris said. "I know." "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Me too." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the building settle around us. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. The sound was lonely and wild and free. Iris fell asleep first, curled up in her sleeping bag with her head on her duffel bag. I sat awake for a long time, watching the shadows, thinking about my father finding documents on Pike's property, thinking about him knowing what it would cost to speak up and doing it anyway, thinking about Sheriff Tom Keller making the same choice, thinking about the fact that we were making that same choice now. The evidence we had found was devastating. The tapes alone were enough to open a federal investigation. Combined with Tom's journal and the testimony of witnesses who had been too afraid to speak for 26 years, we had a case. A real case. But cases took time. Investigations took months or years. And we had 29 days before the county demolished our building and buried the truth in rubble. We needed Kate Keller Morrison to move fast. We needed her to believe us immediately. We needed her to have the power and the will to take down a man who had operated with impunity for 4 decades. It was a lot to ask. but we were asking it anyway. Because the alternative was to stay silent, to take our $400 and our bus tickets and disappear, to let Vernon Pike win one more time, to let our parents and Sheriff Keller and all the other victims be forgotten. And that was not an option. Not anymore. I pulled out the photograph of my parents that I kept in my duffel bag. It was creased and faded, the colors washed out to pastels. My father was young in the picture, maybe 25. My mother was laughing at something outside the frame. They looked happy. They looked alive. "I am going to finish what you started," I whispered to the photograph. "I promise." Outside, the Montana wind howled across the empty plains. Inside, surrounded by evidence and ghosts and the weight of history, I finally fell asleep. Tomorrow, Kate Keller would arrive. Tomorrow, we would find out if justice delayed for 26 years could still be justice served. Tomorrow, the fight would truly begin. In small towns, secrets do not stay buried. They just wait for the right person to dig them up. When word spread that Tom Keller's daughter had returned, that his old station was occupied, that someone was finally asking questions, something shifted in Redemption Bluff. The people who had been silent for 30 years started to remember how to speak. The black SUV appeared on the horizon just after 10 in the morning. We saw it from the window of the sheriff's office, a dark shape cutting across the pale landscape, raising a plume of dust on the gravel road. It moved with purpose, not the casual pace of a local vehicle, but the determined speed of someone who had driven through the night to get here. "She is early," Iris said. We had been awake since dawn, cleaning the station as best we could, sweeping dust, arranging the evidence on Tom Keller's desk in careful order. The journal opened to the final entry. The 6 cassette tapes lined up like soldiers. The map on the wall with its pattern of pins telling a story in red and blue and black. We wanted her to see it all at once, to understand immediately that this was real. The SUV pulled to a stop in front of the building. The door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, maybe 5'9", dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket that looked expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a professional bun. Even from a distance, I could see the resemblance. She had her father's eyes, that same intensity that burned through the faded photograph on the wall. Kate Keller Morrison stood in front of the sheriff's station for a long moment, just staring at it. I wondered what she was seeing. The building where her father had worked. The place where he had died. A monument to a life cut short in a case that had never been solved. Then she walked toward the door with steady, measured steps. I opened it before she could knock. She looked at me, then at Iris, her gaze sharp and assessing. Federal prosecutor eyes trained to read people in seconds, to sort truth from lies with practiced efficiency. "Cole Brennan." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Yes, ma'am, this is my sister Iris." She nodded once, then looked past us into the station. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked through the doorway and stopped. Just stopped, right there in the reception area, and looked around. The dust, the frozen time, the nameplate on the desk that still read Sheriff T. Keller. Her professional mask cracked for just a second. I saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. 26 years, she said quietly. I have not been back here in 26 years. She walked slowly through the space, trailing her fingers along the counter, the bench, the desk. When she reached the hallway leading to the back offices, she paused. "Which one?" "The office at the end," I said, "on the right." She walked down that hallway alone. Iris and I stayed in the main room, giving her space. We heard the door open, heard her footsteps stop. Then, after a long silence, we heard a sound that might have been a sob, quickly stifled. 5 minutes passed. Then she emerged, her eyes red but her face composed. "Show me," she said. "Show me everything." We took her into the sheriff's office. She sat in her father's chair, the cracked leather creaking under her weight. I placed the journal in front of her, open to that first entry about my father. She read it silently, her finger tracing the lines of her father's handwriting. When she finished reading the final entry, the one dated the day before he died, she closed the journal carefully and placed her hand flat on the cover. Then she looked up at us. "The tapes," she said, "play them." I loaded the first cassette into the boom box, pressed play. Vernon Pike's voice filled the room, talking about the Brennan problem, about making it look like an accident, about using the system to disappear 2 orphaned children. Kate's face went very still. She sat motionless through all 6 tapes, listening to men plan murders, discuss bribes, order intimidation and violence. When Pike's voice came on the 5th tape, the one where they planned her father's death, I saw her hands clench into fists on the desk. "Make it look like suicide." The words hung in the air. "He has been stressed. Everyone knows he has been working too hard. Tragic but understandable." The tape ended. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush. Kate stood up abruptly and walked to the window. She stood there with her back to us, her shoulders rigid. I could see her reflection in the dirty glass. She was crying, silent tears running down her face. "My mother told me he was troubled," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said he had been different those last few months. Distant. She said maybe he could not handle the pressure anymore." I believed her. For 26 years, I believed that my father killed himself because he was weak. She turned to face us, and her expression had changed. The grief was still there, but something else was rising underneath it. Something cold and sharp and dangerous. "I became a prosecutor because of him, because I wanted to honor his memory by fighting for justice. And the whole time, the thing that needed justice most was his own death." She walked back to the desk and looked at the evidence spread across it. The journal, the tapes, the map. She studied the pattern of pins just as Iris had done. "Your sister figured it out," I said. "The pattern, the water rights. Pike has been building a monopoly for 40 years. Kate nodded slowly. "Environmental crimes, that is my specialty. I have prosecuted cases like this before. Corporate water theft, aquifer manipulation, fraudulent rights transfers. But never anything this long-running. Never anything with a body count." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. The journal pages, the tape labels, the map. She worked methodically, documenting everything. "This is admissible evidence," she said. "It is also your inheritance which gives you standing. And these recordings, if they can be authenticated, are devastating." She paused. "But we need more. We need witnesses. Living witnesses who saw these crimes happen." "Deputy Rosa Alvarez," Iris said. "She called her yesterday. She was there the night Sheriff Keller died. She knows everything, but she is too scared to testify." Kate stopped taking photos and looked at Iris. "Rosa is alive. In Billings. She has grandchildren. She is terrified Pike will kill them if she talks." Kate was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "I need a protective detail," she said to whoever answered. "Full federal witness protection. Family of 4. Immediate extraction from Billings, Montana. Authorization code Morrison 774 Baker." She listened for a moment. "Yes, I understand it is irregular. I will take full responsibility. Just have the team ready to move today." She hung up and looked at us. "Give me Rosa's number." 20 minutes later, Kate had Rosa on speakerphone. I listened as Kate explained who she was, what she could offer, and why it mattered. "Mrs. Alvarez, my name is Kate Keller Morrison. You knew my father, Sheriff Tom Keller. I am a federal prosecutor now, and I am reopening the investigation into his death. I have evidence, recordings, documentation, but I need your testimony. I can protect you and your family, full witness protection, new identities, relocation. You will be safe." Rose's voice on the other end was shaking. "They killed your father. They will kill me." "Not if I get to them first." Kate's voice was steel. "And I will get to them, but I need you to help me do it. I need you to stand up and tell the truth that my father died protecting." The line was silent for so long I thought Rosa had hung up again. Then she spoke, her voice stronger than before. "What do you need me to do?" Kate smiled, a fierce expression that reminded me of a wolf. "Pack a bag. A team will pick you up within 2 hours. They will bring you here, to Redemption Bluff, to the station where you used to work, and you are going to tell me everything you saw that night." After she hung up, Kate turned to us. "Now we build the case. I need to file paperwork, protective orders to prevent demolition of this building, warrants to seize Pike's business records, emergency injunctions on all his properties pending investigation." She set up a makeshift office at Deputy Alvarez's old desk. Her laptop, portable printer, stacks of legal pads. She worked with intense focus, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Every few minutes, documents would print out. She would sign them, scan them with her phone, and email them to various federal offices. The transformation was remarkable. 20 minutes ago, she had been a daughter crying over her father's murder. Now she was a weapon, sharp and focused and absolutely merciless. Hank arrived around noon with more supplies. When he saw Kate, he stopped in the doorway like he had seen a ghost. "Katie," he whispered, "little Katie Keller." She stood up and crossed the room in 3 strides. They hugged, both of them crying, two people who had loved the same man and lost him to the same violence. When they pulled apart, Hank held her at arm's length, looking at her face. "You look just like him. Same eyes, same stubborn jaw." "He died trying to stop this," Kate said, "and I am going to finish what he started." The word spread fast through Redemption Bluff. Hank must have told someone who told someone else, and by mid-afternoon there was a steady trickle of people arriving at the station. They came in old trucks and dusty sedans, parking in the dirt lot, approaching the door with hesitant steps. They were older people mostly, people who had been adults when Tom Keller died, people who remembered. The first was a woman in her 70s, Margaret Chen, who brought a casserole still warm from her oven, and a story about how her husband had lost his ranch to Pike in 1989, how the stress had killed him 6 months later. "I should have spoken up then," she said, her voice trembling, "but I was scared. I am still scared, but I cannot stay quiet anymore." Others followed. Frank Morrison, who had been forced to sell when his wells mysteriously went dry. Ellen Vasquez, whose brother died in a barn fire that was ruled accidental but never investigated. David Holt, who lost his family's land when the county suddenly declared it in violation of water management regulations. Each person brought a piece of the story: documents, photographs, memories. Kate recorded everything, taking statements with the practiced efficiency of a prosecutor building a case. By evening, the station had transformed into something else entirely. Not just an abandoned building, but a command center, a gathering place. People brought food and coffee. Someone set up a portable generator so we had light and power. The evidence room, which had been empty and forgotten, was now filling with documentation. 30 years of crimes carefully cataloged and preserved. Iris organized it all, creating a system of files and timelines. She had always been good at seeing patterns, at making order from chaos. Now she was doing it with evidence that could bring down an empire. I watched Kate work and saw what she must be like in a courtroom: relentless, detail-oriented. She missed nothing. Every statement was cross-referenced. Every document was verified. She was building not just a case but a fortress, something so airtight that no lawyer, no matter how expensive, could knock it down. Around 8 that evening, a van pulled up. Federal agents, dressed in plain clothes but moving with that unmistakable authority that marked them as law enforcement. And with them, looking smaller and older than I had imagined, was Rosa Alvarez. She stood in front of the station, staring at it the same way Kate had. Then she looked at Kate. "I never thought I would come back here," she said. "Neither did I," Kate replied, "but here we are." They embraced. Two women bound by the same tragedy, separated by 26 years, reunited by the possibility of justice. Inside, Rosa sat at her old desk. The nameplate was still there, dusty but intact. She ran her fingers over it. "I was a good deputy," she said quietly. "I loved this job. I loved working with Tom. When they killed him, they killed this part of my life too." "Tell me what happened," Kate said gently. "Tell me everything." And Rosa did. She told the story of that night in September 1998, how she had been off duty but came to the station because Tom had called her, said he needed a witness for something. How she had arrived to find his truck in the lot but the office dark. How she had heard voices, harsh and angry, coming from inside. How she had hidden in the evidence room when 3 men entered. She named them: Vernon Pike, Carl Drucker, Pike's foreman, and County Commissioner Robert Pike, Vernon's younger brother. They argued with Tom, told him to stop his investigation, told him they would make it worth his while if he walked away. Tom refused. He said he had already sent copies of his evidence to the state attorney general, said it was over. Rosa's voice broke. That was when Pike pulled the gun, not his own gun, Tom's service weapon. He must have taken it from the desk. Tom tried to fight, but Drucker held him down. Pike shot him, right temple. Then they positioned the body to make it look like suicide. They wiped the gun and put it in Tom's hand. They were calm about it, professional, like they had done it before. "How did you escape?" Kate asked. "Back window of the evidence room. It was broken. I climbed out while they were staging the scene. I ran home, packed our things. We left town that night. I wanted to tell someone, but Pike called me. Somehow he knew I had been there. He said if I talked, my children would die. He said it would look like an accident and no one would ever prove otherwise." "So you stayed silent?" "I stayed alive." Rosa looked at Kate with haunted eyes. "I am sorry, I am so sorry. Your father deserved better." Kate reached across the desk and took Rosa's hands. "You did what you had to do to protect your family. My father would have understood that. But now we have a chance to make it right. Will you testify?" "Yes," Rosa's voice was steady now. "Yes, I will testify. I will tell the truth." While Kate took Rosa's formal statement, I went back to exploring the station. There were still parts of it we had not fully searched. The building held more secrets, I was sure of it. Tom Keller had been methodical. He would not have hidden evidence in just one place. I went to the evidence room and started examining the shelves more carefully. They were metal, industrial, bolted to the wall. Most were empty, but there was something about the back wall that looked wrong. The proportions were off. The room should have been deeper based on the exterior dimensions of the building. I knocked on the wall. It sounded hollow. "Iris," I called, "come here." She appeared in the doorway. I showed her what I had found. Together we started examining the wall more closely. It was not a wall at all. It was the back of a filing cabinet, a massive metal one, turned to face away from the room. We tried to move it. It would not budge. It was either bolted down or incredibly heavy. "Leverage," Iris said. "We need leverage." We found a metal pipe in the supply closet and used it as a pry bar. Slowly, Inch by inch, we forced the cabinet to swing away from the wall. It was on wheels that had rusted in place, but with enough force they broke free. Behind the cabinet was a narrow space, and in that space, stacked carefully on the floor, were boxes. Cardboard file boxes, the kind used for long-term storage. I pulled out the first box. It was labeled in Ruth's handwriting, Evidence, County Land Records 1970 to 1990. We carried the boxes out one at a time. There were 12 of them in total. Kate stopped taking Rose's statement when she saw what we had found. "What is this?" she asked. "My grandmother," I said. "She must have hidden these here." We opened the boxes. Inside were thousands of pages of documents, original county land records showing one set of dates and ownership transfers, photocopies of altered records showing different dates, side-by-side comparisons that proved the fraud, water rights deeds with notary stamps that did not match the signatures in the state database, bank records showing payments from Pike to county officials, handwritten ledgers detailing every fraudulent acquisition. Ruth had been gathering evidence for years, running parallel to Tom's investigation. She had access as a county clerk. She had known what to look for, and she had preserved it all, hidden it away in the one place Pike never thought to look, the evidence room of the very station where he had committed murder. But there was more. At the bottom of the final box, wrapped in plastic, were 3 VHS tapes. "Security footage," Kate said, reading the labels. "September 16, 1998, 3 different angles." Kate picked up one of the tapes, examining the label more carefully. Her expression shifted to something like recognition. "My father installed security cameras," she said quietly. "Rosa, you remember this, right? Tom put in a basic video surveillance system about 6 months before he died. Said he wanted documentation of everyone coming and going from the station." Rosa nodded slowly, the memory returning. "Yes, he paid for it himself. Said the county would not approve the budget, but he wanted the building protected. 3 cameras, one at the front entrance, one in the main office, one in the hallway. He was recording everything." "Because he knew he was investigating something dangerous," Kate continued. "He wanted evidence, not just of Pike's crimes, but of who came into this station. Insurance in case something happened." "We do not have a VCR," Iris said. Hank appeared in the doorway. "I heard that." He disappeared and returned 20 minutes later with an old television and VCR player, both covered in dust. He hooked them up to the generator. I put in the first tape. The video quality was poor, grainy black and white, but it was clear enough. The camera had been mounted high in the corner of the main office, pointing at the front door. We watched as 3 men entered. Time stamp, 11:47 p.m. The first was Vernon Pike, younger but unmistakable. The second was a large man in work clothes, presumably Carl Drucker. The third was another man in a suit. They walked directly to the sheriff's office. The camera angle did not show inside that room, but we could see shadows moving. 15 minutes passed. Then we heard a sound even through the poor audio. A gunshot. Kate flinched as if she had been struck. The 3 men emerged. Pike was wiping something with a handkerchief. They walked out calmly. No rush. No panic. Like they had just completed an unpleasant but necessary task. The second tape was from a different angle, showing the hallway. This one captured them entering the sheriff's office. Captured the moment Pike pulled a gun from his jacket. Captured the struggle. Captured the murder. Kate watched it in silence, tears streaming down her face. When it was over, she stood up and walked outside. I followed her. She was standing in the cold Montana night, looking up at the stars. Her breath came out in clouds. "I spent my whole life thinking he gave up," she said. "That he chose death over his family. that we were not enough to keep him alive. He did not give up, I said. He fought, and they murdered him for it. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know that now, and I am going to make them pay for it. We went back inside. Kate was all business again, the emotion compartmentalized, locked away in whatever place prosecutors keep their pain so they can function. This is enough, she said, more than enough. The recordings, Rose's testimony, the documents, the video evidence. I can get federal warrants, RICO charges, murder, conspiracy, fraud, environmental crimes. We are looking at life sentences for everyone involved. But as she said it, I saw her expression darken. What is it? I asked. The statute of limitations. For most of these crimes, it has expired. Fraud from the 70s and 80s, we cannot prosecute. Even recent environmental violations might be too old. What about murder? Murder has no statute of limitations. We can prosecute that, but Vernon Pike is 72 years old. Even if we convict him, he will die in prison within a few years. That is not enough. That does not undo 40 years of theft. That does not give people their land back. So what do? We find current crimes, ongoing violations, things he is doing right now that we can stop and prosecute. As if on cue, Iris looked up from the documents she had been organizing. I think I found something. She held up a folder. Inside were geological surveys, recent ones, dated within the last 2 years. These were in Ruth's last box. They are surveys of this property, of the 40 acres, and they show something I do not understand: lithium deposits. Kate took the surveys and read them carefully. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, it is not just about water. It was never just about water. She spread the surveys on the desk. The technical language was dense, but the maps were clear. Beneath the aquifer, beneath our 40 acres, was a massive lithium deposit, one of the largest in North America according to the estimates. Lithium is the new gold, Kate said. Electric car batteries, energy storage, the demand is exploding. These deposits are worth billions, tens of billions. Pike knew about this, Iris said. That is why he needs our land. The water monopoly was just the first layer. The lithium is the real prize. Kate was already on her phone, pulling up more information. If Pike has been working to acquire mineral rights for a lithium mine, that is current. That is active fraud we can prosecute. And mining operations require extensive environmental permits. If he has been preparing for extraction without proper authorization, that is also current and actionable. She made several rapid phone calls to EPA officials, to Department of Interior, to colleagues in environmental crimes divisions. Within an hour, she had confirmed what we suspected. Pike Cattle and Land Company had filed preliminary permit applications for lithium extraction 3 months ago, under a shell company name, but the ownership traced back to Vernon Pike. The permits were denied due to environmental concerns. But according to Kate's sources, Pike had been preparing to extract anyway, planning to do it covertly, until he had so much capital invested that the government would be forced to allow it rather than waste the resources. This is it, Kate said. This is how we stop him, not just for my father's murder but for ongoing criminal enterprise. Environmental crimes with no statute of limitations, mineral rights fraud, racketeering. This case just became federal priority 1. Over the next 2 hours, more federal agents arrived. EPA investigators, FBI. Kate's team was assembling, drawn by her calls and the weight of the evidence we had compiled. The station, which had been a tomb, was now alive with purpose. People working at every desk, laptops open, documents being scanned and cataloged, phone calls being made to judges for emergency warrants. At midnight, a convoy of vehicles pulled up. I looked out the window and my heart sank. Leading them was a truck I recognized from town, and the man stepping out of it was Vernon Pike himself. He was tall even at 72, silver hair, expensive ranch coat. He moved like a man who had never been told no, never been denied anything he wanted. Behind him were a dozen men, his ranch hands and employees, and a man in a suit who had to be his lawyer. Kate saw them through the window and her jaw set. "Stay inside," she ordered. "Let me handle this." She walked out alone to meet them. I could hear their voices through the door. "Mr. Pike," Kate said, "I am Assistant United States Attorney Kate Keller Morrison. I need to inform you that this building is now under federal protection as part of an ongoing criminal investigation. You and your associates need to leave this property immediately." Pike smiled, a cold expression that did not reach his eyes. "Katie Keller, I remember you, pretty little girl at your daddy's funeral, all grown up now playing lawyer." "I am not playing," Kate said, "and I strongly suggest you leave before I have you arrested for interfering with a federal investigation." "This is my county," Pike said. "That building is condemned. It is scheduled for demolition. These kids are trespassers. The demolition order has been stayed by federal injunction. This property is protected, and these kids are the legal owners with full standing." Pike's smile faded. "You do not know what you are getting into. This is not your fight." "You murdered my father," Kate said, her voice deadly quiet. "You had him killed in that building and you made it look like suicide. That makes it very much my fight." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across Pike's face, just for a second. Then it was gone. "You cannot prove that." "I can, and I will, in federal court, in front of a jury, and when I am done, you will spend the rest of your life in prison." Pike stared at her. The two of them locked in silent battle, measuring each other. Then he turned and walked back to his truck. As he opened the door, he looked back. "This is not over," he said. "No," Kate replied. "It is just beginning." They drove away, leaving dust and the echo of threat hanging in the cold night air. Kate came back inside. The federal agents had watched the whole thing, hands on their weapons, ready to intervene if necessary. "He knows we have him," one of the agents said. "That was a man who just realized his empire is crumbling." "Good," Kate said. "Let him be scared. Let him make mistakes." She turned to me and Iris. "You two need protection. Starting now. You do not go anywhere without a federal escort. You do not talk to anyone Pike sends. You do not open that door unless you know who is on the other side." "Are we in danger?" Iris asked. "Yes, but we are going to keep you safe." That night, we slept in the station surrounded by federal agents. The building that had been cold and empty was now warm and full of people committed to the same cause we were. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds of people working, and thought about my father, about the documents he found, about the choice he made to speak up even knowing it would cost him his life. He had started something he could not finish, but we were going to finish it for him. In the morning, Rosa Alvarez gave her full statement on camera, every detail, every name, every crime. Kate recorded it all, building her case one devastating truth at a time. And somewhere in Redemption Bluff, Vernon Pike was making phone calls to expensive lawyers, trying to stop the inevitable. But justice, once set in motion, is hard to stop. We had the evidence, we had the witnesses, we had the law on our side. And most importantly, we had Kate Keller Morrison, a prosecutor with her father's eyes and her father's stubborn refusal to let the powerful get away with murder. The quiet resistance was over. The war had begun. They say the truth will set you free, but first it will drag you through hell. With a federal indictment hanging over him and 40 years of crimes coming to light, Vernon Pike had two choices: run or fight. Men like Pike do not run. They burn everything down on their way out. The press conference happened 3 days after Kate arrived. She held it on the steps of the federal courthouse in Helena, 200 miles from Redemption Bluff, but close enough that the local news station sent crews. I watched it on a laptop in the sheriff's office, Iris beside me, both of us barely breathing. Kate stood at a podium flanked by FBI agents and EPA officials. She wore a dark suit that made her look older, more severe. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 26 years of grief turned into cold determination. Today I am announcing a federal criminal investigation into a conspiracy spanning 4 decades. Vernon Pike, CEO of Pike Cattle and Land Company, along with multiple co-conspirators, is being charged with murder, racketeering, environmental crimes, fraud, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of their civil rights under color of law. The cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Kate ignored them and continued. In 1998, my father, Sheriff Thomas Keller, was investigating systematic land fraud and water rights theft in Redemption Bluff, Montana. He was murdered to stop that investigation. His death was staged to appear as suicide. For 26 years, that lie stood unchallenged. Today, with new evidence including video footage, audio recordings, and eyewitness testimony, we are setting the record straight. She paused, and for just a moment, I saw the daughter beneath the prosecutor. My father died protecting the truth. Today we honor his sacrifice by exposing it. The news exploded across Montana and then across the country. By evening, it was national news. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all running the same story. Small-town sheriff murdered by corrupt land baron. Daughter returns decades later to seek justice. 2 orphan teenagers uncover evidence that cracks the case wide open. Our phones would not stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. True crime podcasters wanted exclusive access. Book publishers were already reaching out about our story. Kate shut it all down. No interviews, no statements, no distractions. We had one job: build an airtight case and bring it to trial before Pike could use his money and connections to make it disappear. The formal arrest happened at dawn 2 days later. FBI agents surrounded Pike's ranch house, a sprawling compound that sat on what used to be 6 different family properties before Pike acquired them. They knocked on the door at exactly 6 in the morning. Pike's lawyer was already there, expensive suit and practiced indignation. His client surrendered peacefully, hands held out for the cuffs like he was doing them a favor by cooperating. The bail hearing was set for that afternoon. Kate had argued for no bail, flight risk, danger to witnesses, history of intimidation and violence, but Pike's lawyers brought character witnesses, prominent businessmen, a state senator, letters from charitable organizations Pike had donated to over the years. The judge set bail at $10 million. Pike posted it within an hour. He walked out of that courthouse a free man, at least temporarily, and the first thing he did was give a press conference of his own. Standing on those same courthouse steps where Kate had announced the charges, he declared his innocence with the smooth confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. "These charges are a witch hunt," he said, looking directly into the cameras. "A vendetta by a bitter daughter who cannot accept that her father took his own life. I am a pillar of this community. I have created jobs, supported families, built an industry from nothing. I will fight these baseless accusations and I will be vindicated." Watching it on the news made my stomach turn. The way he twisted the narrative, the way he made himself the victim, the way he never once acknowledged the families he had destroyed. But Kate was unmoved. "Let him talk," she said. "Every word he speaks can be used against him. The more confident he acts, the harder he will fall." Back in Redemption Bluff, the town was dividing. Those who had profited from Pike's empire, who had jobs with his company, or who had sold their land willingly and made good money, they sided with him. They saw us as troublemakers, outsiders stirring up old grudges for attention. But others, the ones who had been forced out, the ones who had lost everything, they rallied to our side. They brought more evidence, more stories, more proof that Pike's empire was built on blood and theft. The sheriff's station became something it had never been before, a symbol. People drove past slowly, looking at it with new eyes. Some left flowers at the door in memory of Tom Keller. Others left notes thanking us for speaking up. A few left threats. Federal agents were posted around the property 24 hours a day now. For our protection, Kate said, but also to preserve the evidence. The station was officially a federal crime scene, and everything in it was under protective custody. We kept working. The restoration that had started as a requirement to keep our inheritance became something more meaningful. Every wall we repaired, every window we replaced, every surface we cleaned. It was not just fixing a building. It was erasing the decay that had been allowed to fester while Pike operated with impunity. Hank came every day with supplies and labor. He brought other men too, former ranchers who had nothing left but time and anger and a desire to make something right. They worked alongside federal contractors, creating an unlikely alliance of old cowboys and government employees, all united by a common purpose. The building started to look like it might have looked when Tom Keller worked there. Clean, functional, respectable, a place where the law meant something. 3 weeks after Kate's press conference, Pike made his move. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Iris had gone into town with Hank to pick up supplies. I was at the station with 2 federal agents going through documents in the evidence room. We heard vehicles approaching, a lot of them. I looked out the window and my blood went cold. Trucks were pulling up, forming a semicircle around the building. 20 vehicles, maybe 30, all of them carrying men, ranch hands, Pike employees, people whose livelihoods depended on Pike staying in power. One of the agents immediately called for backup. The other moved to position himself between me and the door. "Do not go outside," he said. "Stay calm. We have protocols for this." The men got out of their trucks. They were not armed, at least not visibly, but there were so many of them. They stood there in a line facing the building, waiting. Then Pike himself arrived, stepping out of a black truck, flanked by his lawyer and 2 men I did not recognize. The agent opened the door just wide enough to shout through, "This is federal property. You are all trespassing. Leave immediately or you will be arrested." Pike smiled. "We are on a public road. Last I checked, that is not trespassing." "You are attempting to intimidate a federal witness. That is a crime." "I am attempting to speak to the young man who is making wild accusations about me. I have a right to face my accuser." The standoff lasted 20 minutes. More federal vehicles arrived, sirens wailing. Local sheriff's deputies showed up too, though they stayed back, clearly uncertain whose side they were supposed to be on. Then the townspeople came. Hank's truck was first, skidding to a stop on the road. He got out and behind him were others. Margaret Chen, Frank Morrison, Ellen Vasquez, David Holt, the families who had lost everything. They formed their own line, standing between Pike's men and the building. "You want to get to those kids," Hank shouted. "You go through us first." For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. 2 sides facing each other across 20 feet of dirt and decades of buried anger. Pike looked at Hank with something like disappointment. "You are making a mistake, old friend." "I already made my mistake," Hank replied. 26 years ago when I did not stand with Tom. I am not making it again." Pike's lawyer whispered something in his ear. Pike listened, nodded, then turned and walked back to his truck. "We will see you in court," he said. They left slowly, the trucks peeling away one by one, leaving dust and tension hanging in the air. The townspeople stayed for hours after that, keeping vigil, bringing food, telling stories about Tom Keller, about what the town used to be before Pike took over, about what it could be again if we won. When Iris finally returned, I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long time, processing. "He is scared," she said finally, "really scared. He has been in control for so long that he does not know how to lose. That makes him dangerous." She was right. The next attack came 3 days later, and it was more personal. Iris had developed a routine. Every morning she walked to the small library in town, a one-room building that stayed open 3 days a week. She liked to research there, away from the chaos of the station, finding quiet to think and read. The federal agents had cleared it as safe. Small town, public space, no reason to worry. She was walking back, a bag of library books over her shoulder, when a van pulled up beside her. The side door slid open. 2 men got out. Before she could scream, they grabbed her and pulled her inside. The federal agent assigned to her gave chase, but the van was faster. It disappeared down a side road before backup could arrive. I found out 20 minutes later when Kate called me, her voice tight with controlled panic. "They took Iris. Pike's men took Iris." The fear that hit me was primal, physical. My little sister, the only family I had left, in the hands of a man who had murdered dozens of people over 40 years. Kate was already coordinating with the FBI, tracking the van, setting up roadblocks, but in the back of my mind I knew Pike was not going to hurt her, not yet. He was making a point. 2 hours later my phone rang, unknown number. I answered. Cole Brennan, a voice I recognized from the tapes, smooth, educated, cold, Vernon Pike. "Where is my sister?" "She is safe. For now, we are just having a conversation. She is a smart girl, very observant, reminds me of your grandmother. If you hurt her, I will kill you myself." He laughed. "I believe you would try. You Brennans have always been stubborn. Your father was stubborn too. Look where that got him." "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. This crusade you are on, it is not just about the past. It is about the future, my family's future, the future of everyone whose livelihood depends on my company. You are trying to destroy all of that based on old tapes and older grudges. You murdered my parents. You murdered Sheriff Keller. You stole from dozens of families. I built an empire. I created opportunity where there was none. Yes, some people got hurt along the way. That is the cost of progress. But the good I have done far outweighs the bad. Let my sister go. Soon. First, I need you to deliver a message to Kate Morrison. Tell her that if she continues this prosecution, people will get hurt. Not just you and your sister. Other people. Innocent people. A lot of blood will be on her hands." He hung up. I stood there, phone in my shaking hand, rage and fear warring inside me. Kate was already tracing the call, but I knew it would not help. Pike was too smart for that. 30 minutes later, the same van pulled up in front of the station. The door opened and Iris stumbled out, unharmed but shaking. The van drove away before anyone could react. I ran to her, pulled her into a hug. She was trembling. "He wanted me to see," she said. "He drove me to his ranch, showed me everything, the house, the land, All of it. He said it was built with hard work and sacrifice. Said our father was a thief who tried to steal documents that did not belong to him. Did he hurt you? No, he was almost kind. That was the scariest part. He talked about you, about me, about Grandma Ruth, like he knew us, like we were part of some story he had been telling himself for years. She pulled back and looked at me with haunted eyes. He is not a monster, Cole. That is what makes him so dangerous. He believes he is the hero of this story. He believes everything he did was justified. You cannot reason with someone like that. Kate arrived within minutes of Iris's return, federal agents swarming the building. She was furious, already on the phone with judges, demanding Pike's bail be revoked for witness intimidation. But Pike's lawyers were good. They argued there was no proof Pike himself had ordered the abduction, that his employees had acted independently, that Iris had been returned unharmed within hours. The judge declined to revoke bail but added electronic monitoring. It was not enough. We all knew it was not enough. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Pike's words, about progress and sacrifice, about how he had convinced himself that the people he had destroyed were acceptable losses. I got up and started searching the building again. There had to be more. Tom Keller was too careful. He would not have put all his evidence in one place. I went back to the sheriff's private office and started examining everything with new eyes. The desk, the filing cabinet, the walls, the floor. The floor. There was something about one section of floorboards near the desk that looked different, slightly darker, like they had been replaced more recently than the rest. I got down on my hands and knees and ran my fingers along the seams. One board was shorter than the others. I dug my fingernails under the edge and pulled. It lifted easily, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside was a fireproof box, small and heavy, with a combination lock. I tried obvious combinations. Tom's birthday, Kate's birthday, the date of his death. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the family photograph. I took it off the wall and examined it more closely. In the bottom corner, handwritten in faded ink, was a date, Kate's birthday, but written in a specific format. Month, day, year. 4 digits, 2 digits, 2 digits. I tried it. The lock clicked open. Inside the box were 3 things. First, a handwritten will. Tom's will, dated September 15, 1998, the day before he died. It was simple, everything to his wife Sarah, but there was a letter attached. Kate, if you are reading this, I am gone. I am sorry. I am sorry I chose this fight. Sorry I will not see you graduate, get married, have kids, but I am not sorry I stood up. This gun killed me, but it was held by Vernon Pike's hand. The real murder weapon is greed. Make him pay. Not for revenge, for justice. So the next generation does not grow up in a world where powerful men can kill and steal without consequence. I love you. I am proud of you. Finish this. The second item in the box was the gun itself, Tom's service weapon, but it had an evidence tag attached to it filled out in Tom's own handwriting. Item, murder weapon, collected by T. Keller. Notes, will be used to kill me. Preserving for DNA evidence. He had known. He had known they were going to kill him, and he had prepared for it. Had tagged the evidence himself because he knew no one else would. The third item was a USB drive, wrapped in plastic. I took it upstairs and plugged it into one of the federal agents' laptops. It contained files, hundreds of them, scanned documents, audio files, video files, everything Tom had gathered, digitized, and preserved, and one file labeled Read ME First. I opened it. It was a text document, a message from Tom. If you are reading this, I am dead. Pike has won the battle, but not the war. Everything you need to destroy him is on this drive. Water rights fraud, murder, conspiracy, environmental crimes, 40 years of evidence. I have sent copies to 3 people I trust. If all of them fail, this is the backup. Use it. Finish what I started. Do not let my death be meaningless." I called Kate immediately. She arrived within the hour and I showed her everything. The will, the gun, the USB drive. She read her father's letter in silence, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she folded it carefully and put it in her jacket pocket, close to her heart. "The gun can be tested," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Modern DNA analysis can pull samples from the grip, the trigger, anywhere Pike touched it. If his DNA is on this weapon, combined with the video evidence and Rose's testimony, we have him for murder. Undeniable, irrefutable." She plugged the USB drive into her laptop and started going through the files. Her eyes widened. "This is everything, everything. Financial records, recorded confessions, documentation of every crime." She looked at me. "Your father is mentioned here too. Tom documented his murder, has the names of everyone involved." Over the next week, the case that Kate had been building became a fortress. The gun was sent to the FBI lab for analysis. Pike's DNA was on file from a previous background check for a federal land use permit. The match came back within 48 hours. Positive, Vernon Pike had handled that weapon. Combined with the video showing him entering the office with it and leaving without it. Combined with Rose's testimony that she saw him shoot Tom. Combined with the evidence on the USB drive. It was airtight. Kate filed an amended indictment. First-degree murder. Federal charges that came with mandatory life sentence. No possibility of parole. Then the unexpected happened. A man showed up at the station. He was old, late 60s, worn down by hard living and harder choices. He said his name was Carl Drucker. He was Pike's foreman, the man who had been in that office the night Tom died. "I need to talk to Kate Morrison," he said. "I need to confess." Kate took him into the sheriff's office and closed the door. I watched through the window as Drucker talked, and Kate recorded every word. He spoke for 3 hours. When Kate emerged, her face was grim. "Drucker is dying, stage 4 lung cancer. He has maybe 6 months. He wants to make peace with God before he goes." She paused. "He confessed to everything, not just Tom's murder, 12 other murders over 40 years. Ranchers who would not sell, activists who asked too many questions, people who got in Pike's way. Drucker was the one who did the actual killing. Pike gave the orders. Drucker carried them out. 12 murders, 12 families destroyed. All of it documented now in sworn testimony from the man who pulled the triggers, set the fires, staged the accidents." "Why is he talking now?" I asked. Kate looked at me with something like pity in her eyes, "Because he is terrified. Not of prison, not of death, of hell. He is a religious man, apparently. Believes he is going to burn for eternity unless he confesses and repents, so he is confessing." "Will you give him immunity?" "No, but I will recommend leniency. Let him die in a hospital bed instead of a prison cell. It is more mercy than he deserves, but it is the price for his testimony." That same afternoon, another visitor arrived. This one was even more unexpected. Robert Pike, Vernon Pike's son, the county commissioner who had signed the demolition order on our building. He was younger than I expected, mid-40s. He looked like his father but without the cold edge. He looked, more than anything, tired. "I need to speak with whoever is in charge of this investigation," he said. Kate met with him privately. Their conversation lasted even longer than Drucker's had. When Robert Pike left, Kate called a meeting, all the federal agents, Rosa, Hank, me, and Iris. "Robert Pike is cooperating," she said. "Full cooperation. He is providing financial records that prove his father is still actively stealing land and water rights, current crimes, ongoing fraud. He is also providing evidence of the lithium mining scheme, environmental permits that were fraudulently obtained, plans to extract resources without proper authorization, bribes to federal officials. Why, Iris asked, why would he turn on his own father? Kate was quiet for a moment because he did not know, not the full extent. He knew his father was aggressive, ruthless, but he thought it was just business. When the murder charges came out, when he learned about Tom Keller and your parents and all the others, he realized his entire life was built on blood money. His inheritance is soaked in it. He has children, grandchildren. He does not want them to carry that legacy. She paused. Also, he is angry. His father lied to him, used him, made him complicit in crimes he never agreed to commit. That kind of betrayal runs deep. Robert's testimony was particularly damning when it came to the demolition notice. Kate had questioned him carefully about it. Your father had you sign that condemnation order, Kate said during the recorded deposition. The one targeting this property. Tell us about that. Robert's face was heavy with regret. He told me it was standard county procedure, routine paperwork for abandoned buildings that posed safety hazards. I signed dozens of these a month. I never questioned it. He gave me a stack of documents, pointed to signature lines, told me they were all part of regular county business. I trusted him. I was his son. Why would I think he was manipulating me? But the timing was precise, Kate pressed. The day before Cole Brennan's 18th birthday, the exact moment the inheritance would activate. Robert shook his head bitterly. I did not know about the inheritance. I did not know about Cole and Iris. My father kept everything compartmentalized. He told me what I needed to know to do my job and nothing more. Looking back, I can see how he used my position, my signature, my authority to advance his agenda. I was a tool to him, nothing more. Did you know about the murders? No, Robert's voice broke. If I had known, I would have turned him in myself years ago. I have spent my entire adult life believing my father was a hard man but an honest one. Finding out the truth has destroyed me. Everything I thought I knew about him, about our family, about myself, it was all a lie. Kate showed me the recording after the deposition. This, she said, is what breaks Vernon Pike's defense. His own son testifying that Vernon manipulated county processes, used his family as unwitting accomplices, and hid his crimes behind layers of legitimate business. Robert's cooperation proves the conspiracy extended into the present day. With Robert Pike's testimony and Drucker's confession and all the evidence we had already compiled, the case was no longer just strong. It was overwhelming. The trial was set for 2 months out. Federal Court, Denver. Kate would lead the prosecution personally, assisted by a team of federal prosecutors who specialized in environmental crimes and racketeering. Pike's legal team was formidable. 6 lawyers from one of the biggest firms in the country. They filed motion after motion, trying to suppress evidence, trying to delay, trying to get charges dismissed. Kate shot down every single one. The preliminary hearings were brutal. I watched as Pike's lawyers tried to discredit Rosa, suggesting she had memory problems, suggesting she was being coached, suggesting her testimony was revenge for being fired. Rosa sat in the witness box and calmly destroyed every argument. She had kept notes. She had kept evidence. She had been waiting 26 years for this moment, and she was not going to let expensive lawyers intimidate her into silence. When they tried to suppress the video evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally, Kate presented documentation showing the cameras had been legally installed by Tom Keller as part of his official duties as sheriff, and the footage was part of his investigation records. When they tried to claim the audio recordings were inadmissible, Kate brought in expert witnesses who authenticated every tape, confirmed the voices, established chain of custody through Ruth Brennan's documented preservation of evidence. The gun was the killing blow, DNA evidence, Pike's fingerprints, Tom's blood, the evidence tag in Tom's handwriting establishing his awareness and intent to preserve it as future proof. There was no way to explain it away. Pike's lawyers tried to negotiate a plea deal. Voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, 20 years instead of life. Kate refused. Life without parole or trial, those are your options. They chose trial. As the trial date approached, the pressure became unbearable. Media camped outside the station. Death threats arrived daily. Pike's remaining supporters in Redemption Bluff made life difficult for anyone who sided with us. But the building was done. The restoration was complete. The sheriff's station looked the way it must have looked in its prime, clean, proud, functional, a place where the law meant something. We held a small ceremony the week before the trial. Kate, Rosa, Hank, the townspeople who had stood with us, federal agents who had protected us, all gathered in front of the station. A brass plaque was mounted beside the door. It read, Thomas Keller Memorial Station, in memory of Sheriff Tom Keller and all those who fought for justice in Redemption Bluff. The truth endures. Kate stood beside the plaque and spoke. My father believed in the law. He believed that justice was not just for the powerful but for everyone. He died defending that belief. This building stands as proof that he was right. That truth does endure. That justice delayed is not justice denied. It is just justice waiting for someone brave enough to fight for it. She looked at me and Iris. These two kids could have walked away. They could have taken the easy path, but they chose to fight. They chose to finish what my father started. That took more courage than anyone should ever have to have. I am honored to stand with them. The crowd applauded. It was a small sound in the vast Montana silence, but it meant everything. That night, I stood outside the station and looked up at the stars. The same stars my father had seen. The same stars Sheriff Tom Keller had seen. The same stars that had watched this land for thousands of years while humans played out their small dramas of greed and courage, of corruption and justice. Tomorrow, we would travel to Denver. Tomorrow, the trial would begin. Tomorrow, Vernon Pike would finally face the consequences of 40 years of murder and theft. But tonight, we had this moment, this peace, this station that had been a tomb and was now a memorial, a promise kept. Iris came and stood beside me. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified. Me too. We stood together in the dark. Two orphans who had inherited a mystery and uncovered a truth that would change everything. The reckoning was coming. And we were ready. Justice is a strange thing. It does not erase the past. It does not bring back the dead. But it does something else, something maybe more important. It draws a line in the dirt and says no further. In a federal courtroom in Denver, surrounded by families who had waited 40 years, we watched a powerful man finally face the truth. And the truth had teeth. The Alfred A. Arad United States Courthouse in Denver is an imposing building, all glass and steel and the weight of federal authority. We arrived on a gray Monday morning, the first day of what Kate said would be a 3-week trial. The media presence was overwhelming. Camera crews lined the steps. Reporters shouted questions we did not answer. We just walked through the chaos with our heads down, flanked by federal marshals. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, high ceilings, the seal of the federal judiciary mounted on the wall behind the judge's bench. It looked like every courtroom scene from every legal drama I had ever seen, except this was real. The consequences were real. Vernon Pike sat at the defense table, surrounded by his 6 lawyers in their expensive suits. He wore a dark blue suit himself, looking every inch the successful businessman, the pillar of the community. His silver hair was perfectly combed. His posture was straight. He looked like a man who had never doubted he would win. When he saw me and Iris in the gallery, he smiled. Not a cruel smile, almost friendly, like we were all part of some game he was confident he would win. Kate sat at the prosecution table with 3 other federal prosecutors. She wore a simple black suit, no jewelry, no makeup beyond the minimum. She looked like a weapon that had been honed for exactly this purpose. The jury was seated, 12 people, 7 women, 5 men, ages ranging from late 20s to early 70s. They looked at Pike with curiosity, at us with sympathy, at Kate with attention. They did not know yet what they were about to hear, how the story they thought they understood would be turned inside out. All rise. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, the Honorable Judge Margaret Chin presiding. The judge was a small Asian woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she had seen every trick in the book and would not tolerate any of them. She sat, arranged her papers, and looked out over the courtroom. "We are here for the matter of United States versus Vernon Pike. Will the prosecution present opening arguments?" Kate stood. She did not use notes. She did not need them. She had been preparing for this moment for 26 years. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is about power, about what happens when one man decides that the law does not apply to him, that other people's lives, other people's land, other people's water are his to take. Vernon Pike spent 40 years building an empire through murder, fraud, and systematic theft. He killed anyone who stood in his way. He corrupted officials. He destroyed families. And he did it all with such confidence that he never thought he would face consequences." She paused, let the words settle. "My father, Sheriff Thomas Keller, tried to stop him. In 1998, my father was investigating Vernon Pike for land fraud and water rights theft. He gathered evidence. He recorded conversations. He documented crimes. And on September 16, 1998, Vernon Pike had my father murdered in his own office. Then Pike staged it to look like suicide. For 26 years, that lie stood. Until 2 teenagers, orphans themselves because Pike had their parents murdered too, found the evidence my father had hidden. The evidence that proves, beyond any doubt, that Vernon Pike is a murderer. The trial lasted 3 weeks, but it felt like 3 months. Every day was a marathon of testimony, evidence presentation, cross-examination. Kate built her case like she was constructing a cathedral, one stone at a time, each piece fitting perfectly with the others. Rosa Alvarez testified first. She sat in the witness box with her hands folded, her voice steady, and told the jury exactly what she had seen that night in September 1998. Pike's lawyers tried to shake her, tried to suggest her memory was faulty, tried to imply she had been coerced into testifying. "Ma'am," the lead defense attorney said, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "is it not true that you fled Redemption Bluff in fear immediately after Sheriff Keller's death?" "Yes." "And you have not spoken about these events for 26 years?" "Yes." "So how can you be certain your memories are accurate after so much time?" Rosa looked at him with eyes that had seen too much to be intimidated by a man in an expensive suit. "Sir, I have relived that night every single day for 26 years. I see it when I close my eyes. I hear the gunshot. I smell the cordite. I remember exactly where each man stood. I remember Vernon Pike's face when he pulled the trigger. Some memories do not fade. They burn." The defense attorney sat down. Carl Drucker testified next. He was skeletal now, the cancer eating him from the inside. He could barely walk to the stand, but his voice was clear. Kate asked him simple questions. How many people did you kill on Vernon Pike's orders? 12. How did you kill them? Drucker went through the list. Barn fires, tractor accidents, car crashes, poisonings. He spoke in a monotone like he was reading a grocery list. Each death planned, each one made to look like an accident or natural causes. And Sheriff Thomas Keller. That was Mr. Pike himself. He insisted on doing that one personally. Said Keller had disrespected him, made it personal. I just held the sheriff down while Mr. Pike shot him. The jury looked at Pike. He sat motionless, his face a mask, but I saw his jaw clench. Robert Pike, Vernon's son, testified on day 7. The courtroom was packed. Everyone wanted to see a son testify against his father. Robert looked older than his 45 years. The stress of betrayal had aged him. He took the stand and refused to look at his father. Kate walked him through the financial records, shell companies, forged documents, bribes paid to county officials, environmental permits fraudulently obtained, a systematic criminal enterprise spanning 4 decades. The defense tried to break him on cross-examination. Mr. Pike, is it not true that you have a personal grudge against your father? Robert looked at the lawyer with something close to pity. My grudge is not personal, it is moral. I spent my entire life believing my father was a businessman, a hard man, yes, but honest in his own way. Then I learned he was a murderer, that my inheritance is built on the graves of innocent people, that every dollar I have ever spent came from blood money. So yes, I have a grudge, against what he did, against what he made me part of without my knowledge. When did you first learn about these crimes? When the federal indictment was unsealed. I read the charges and I could not believe them. I thought there had been a mistake. Then I looked at my father's private files, the ones he thought were secure, and I found proof of everything, every murder, every theft, every lie. He finally looked at his father. You made me complicit, you used me. You destroyed the Pike name, that is what I cannot forgive. Vernon Pike stared back at his son with something that might have been hate or might have been grief. It was hard to tell. The forensic evidence took 3 days to present. DNA experts testified about the gun, Pike's fingerprints, his DNA on the grip and trigger, Tom Keller's blood on the barrel. The ballistics matched it to the bullet that killed Tom. The video evidence was played on large screens. The jury watched in silence as Vernon Pike entered the sheriff's station, carrying a gun. Watched as he emerged 15 minutes later without it. Watched as he wiped his hands with a handkerchief. The audio tapes were played. Pike's voice filled the courtroom, planning murders, ordering intimidation, discussing how to steal land and water rights. The jury heard him talk about the Brennan problem, about making my father's death look like an accident, about using the foster care system to make me and Iris disappear. Kate called me to testify on day 12. I told the jury about finding the inheritance letter, about the journey to Montana, about discovering the journal and the tapes and the evidence, about everything my grandmother had done to preserve the truth. Pike's lawyer cross-examined me. Mr. Brennan, is it not true that you stand to profit significantly from this trial, that you have already been approached by book publishers and movie producers? I have been approached, I have turned them all down. But you could profit in the future. I looked at Pike, then back at the lawyer. Sir, no amount of money will bring back my parents, or Sheriff Keller, or the other families Pike destroyed. This is not about profit, this is about justice. On day 15, Kate played her final card. The USB drive evidence, Tom Keller's digital archive, 40 years of crimes meticulously documented, financial records, recorded confessions, photographs, video, everything. The jury spent an entire day reviewing it on laptops provided by the court. I watched their faces change as they went deeper into the files. Shock, disgust, anger. By the end of the day, they were not just looking at Vernon Pike. They were glaring at him. The defense case lasted 3 days. Pike's lawyers called character witnesses, business associates who testified about his philanthropy, community leaders who spoke about jobs he had created, a pastor who described him as a man of faith. But under cross-examination, Kate demolished each one. Did you know about the murders? No. Did you know about the fraud? No. Did you know about the environmental crimes? No. So you are testifying about a man you did not really know at all. Vernon Pike himself did not testify. His lawyers advised against it. They knew Kate would destroy him on cross-examination. Closing arguments happened on a Friday. Pike's lead attorney spoke first, trying to spin a narrative about ambitious prosecutors, faulty memories, circumstantial evidence. He argued for reasonable doubt. Then Kate stood. Members of the jury, this case is not complicated. Vernon Pike murdered Thomas Keller. We have video of him entering the office with the gun. We have DNA evidence proving he handled that weapon. We have an eyewitness who saw him pull the trigger. We have his own voice on tape planning the murder. There is no reasonable doubt here. There is only the truth. She pointed at Pike. That man built an empire on the backs of dead men. He stole land. He stole water. He stole lives. For 40 years, he operated with impunity because he believed himself untouchable. He believed the law was for other people, not for him. She paused. Today you have the power to prove him wrong, to show that in this country no one is above the law, not even powerful men who think they are. My father died believing in that principle. Dozens of others died because they stood up for it. Now it is your turn. Do your duty. Find Vernon Pike guilty. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. We waited in a conference room. Kate paced. Rosa prayed quietly in a corner. Hank sat with his hands clasped, staring at nothing. Iris and I held hands, not speaking. When the bailiff finally came to get us, his face was neutral, professional. He gave nothing away. The courtroom was silent as we filed back in. Pike stood flanked by his lawyers. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The foreman stood, an older man, a rancher from eastern Colorado. He had the weathered face of someone who had spent his life working the land, someone who understood what Pike had stolen. On the charge of first-degree murder of Thomas Keller, how do you find? Guilty. The courtroom erupted, crying, shouting. The judge hammered her gavel. Order, order in this court. Pike stood motionless, his face blank. In that moment, I think he finally understood. He had lost. The foreman continued. Guilty on all charges. Murder, racketeering, conspiracy, environmental crimes, fraud, every single count. Kate sat down slowly, tears streaming down her face. Rosa sobbed openly. Hank put his head in his hands. Iris squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. We won, she whispered. We actually won. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later. Pike's lawyers argued for leniency. He was 72 years old, in poor health. No prior criminal record, pillar of the community. Kate stood and addressed the judge. Your Honor, Vernon Pike showed no leniency to his victims. He showed no mercy. He destroyed families without hesitation. He murdered people who stood in his way. He corrupted an entire county's government for personal profit. The only appropriate sentence is life without possibility of parole." The judge agreed. "Vernon Pike, you are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole on the murder charge. Additionally, concurrent sentences totaling 400 years on the remaining counts. You will spend the rest of your natural life incarcerated." She paused, looked at him directly. "You built an empire on murder and theft. That empire is forfeit. All assets will be seized and liquidated to compensate your victims. You leave this courtroom with nothing but the weight of your crimes." Pike was led away in handcuffs. As he passed our row, he looked at me one last time. The smile was gone. In its place was something that might have been acceptance, or perhaps just exhaustion. The aftermath moved quickly. Within days, federal marshals seized every asset Pike owned. The ranch, the land, the company, the bank accounts, everything. The total value was staggering. Over $800 million. It was liquidated through federal auction, with proceeds going to a victim compensation fund. Families who had lost land got it back when possible. Those whose land had been developed beyond recovery received financial compensation. Medical funds were established for people suffering health effects from environmental contamination. A cleanup trust was created to restore the damaged aquifer. Redemption Bluff began to transform. New families moved in. Businesses reopened. The town that had been dying for 40 years started to breathe again. The sheriff's station became the Keller Memorial Justice Center. Part museum, part community center, part legal aid office. The building where Tom Keller died became a monument to everything he had lived for. We held a dedication ceremony on a bright September morning, almost exactly a year after we had first arrived. The entire town turned out. News cameras recorded it for history. A bronze plaque was mounted on the wall of the main office, listing the names of everyone who had died because of Pike's crimes. Tom Keller's name was first. My parents, James and Mary Brennan, were second and third. Then 47 others, each name a life stolen, each name a reminder. Kate gave a speech, standing in the office where her father had worked, where he had died. "This building is more than bricks and mortar. It is a promise that truth matters, that justice is not just for the powerful, that ordinary people who stand up for what is right can change the world. My father believed that. He died for it, but he was right." She looked at me and Iris. These two young people could have walked away. They could have sold this property and started over somewhere else. Instead, they chose to fight. They chose to uncover the truth their grandmother had preserved. They chose to finish what my father started. That took extraordinary courage. Rosa spoke next, her voice carrying across the crowd. "I ran for 26 years. I was terrified. I let fear control me. But Cole and Iris and Kate showed me that silence is just another way of letting evil win. I am done running. I am done being silent. This building stands as proof that it is never too late to do the right thing." Hank was the last to speak. He stood at the podium with his weathered hands gripping the edges, his voice rough with emotion. "Tom Keller was my best friend. When he died, I should have fought. I should have demanded answers. Instead, I stayed quiet. I let fear win. I have lived with that regret every day since." He paused, composed himself. "But today, standing here in this building that his daughter and these kids fought to preserve, I can finally say that Tom's death was not in vain. Justice came. It came late, but it came." After the ceremony, people lingered. They walked through the building, touching the walls, looking at the photographs, reading the plaques. It was like they were trying to absorb the history, to make it part of themselves. An elderly woman approached me. She introduced herself as Margaret Wallace, widow of a rancher Pike had forced out in 1987. Her husband had died of a heart attack 6 months after losing their land. "Thank you," she said simply. "For 37 years I thought we had just been unlucky, that we had failed somehow. Now I know we were victims. That matters. Knowing the truth matters." She pressed something into my hand. A small photograph, faded and creased. It showed her and her husband standing in front of a ranch house, young and hopeful. "That is what he stole," she said. "Not just land, hope, but you gave it back. Not to us, we are too old, but to the next generation. You gave them hope that justice exists." Over the months that followed, the station became what Tom Keller had always wanted it to be. A place where people could come for help, where the law worked for everyone, not just the powerful. Kate arranged for pro bono lawyers to staff the legal aid office 3 days a week. They helped people navigate the victim compensation process. They helped families fight wrongful foreclosures. They provided services that small-town Montana had never had access to before. Rosa moved back to Redemption Bluff permanently. She got a job at the center, helping coordinate victim services. After 26 years of running, she was finally home. Hank donated his hardware store building to the town for additional office space. He spent his days at the center too, mentoring young people, teaching them trades, telling stories about Tom Keller and what the town used to be. As for me and Iris, we had decisions to make. The settlement included compensation for my parents' wrongful death, $2.3 million, more money than I had ever imagined having. We could have left, could have gone anywhere, started over in a city where no one knew us, where we did not carry the weight of all this history. But we stayed. I enrolled in the community college 2 hours away, studying criminal justice. I wanted to understand the law, to learn how to use it the way Tom Keller had, the way Kate did, as a weapon against injustice. Iris got her GED and started online courses in environmental science. She wanted to understand water systems, aquifer management, land conservation. She wanted to make sure what Pike had done could never happen again. We lived in the sheriff's station. The building had become our home in truth, not just legally. We renovated the holding cell, turned it into Iris's bedroom, removed the bars, painted the walls a soft blue, added a window. The place that had once held prisoners now held hope. My room was the old evidence room. Shelves that had been empty for 26 years now held books and clothes, and the normal debris of a life being lived. The sheriff's office remained exactly as it had been. Tom's desk, the map on the wall, the photographs. We kept it as a kind of shrine, a reminder. 6 months after the trial, Kate came to visit. She brought a box with her, something she had been keeping in storage. "These were my father's personal effects," she said, "things that were not evidence. I thought they should be here." Inside were Tom Keller's commendations, his badge, photographs of him with other law enforcement officers, a baseball glove and ball, personal things that made him real, not just a name on a plaque but a person who had lived and laughed and played catch and loved his daughter. Kate set up one more photograph on the desk, the family photo, Tom, his wife, and young Kate. "He would have liked what you have done with this place," she said quietly. "He always believed buildings had meaning, that where we choose to stand matters. You chose to stand here, in his office, fighting his fight. That would have mattered to him." She came to visit every few months after that, sometimes for work, following up on the ongoing environmental remediation, sometimes just to check in, to sit in her father's chair and feel close to him. 1 year after the verdict, on the anniversary of that day, we held a memorial service, not just for Tom Keller but for everyone Pike had destroyed, all 50 names on the plaque. People came from across the state, families of victims, survivors, townspeople, federal agents who had worked the case, reporters who had covered it. The cemetery where Tom was buried was crowded with hundreds of people who had never met him but understood what he represented. Kate stood at his grave and read from the letter he had left her. Some things are worth dying for. The law is worth dying for. Justice is worth dying for. She folded the letter and placed it on the headstone, along with a bouquet of wild flowers. You were right, Dad, and we finished it. We finished what you started. That evening, back at the station, I found something I had not seen before. Behind the filing cabinet in the evidence room, there was a small metal box I had missed during all our searching. It must have fallen behind when we moved the cabinet to find Ruth's documents. I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside was a letter, sealed in plastic, addressed to me in my grandmother's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Cole and Iris, if you are reading this, it means you found everything. It means you finished what Tom and I started all those years ago. I am so proud of you. I need to tell you the truth about something. Something I have kept secret because the time was never right. But if you are reading this, the time has come. Your grandfather, my husband, was not the man whose name is on your birth certificate. Your real grandfather was a man named Thomas Cross. He was Tom Keller's closest friend and deputy before Tom became sheriff. Thomas died in 1975, killed in the line of duty. I was pregnant with your mother when he died. I remarried later, took a different name, but your mother was always a Cross. And when she married your father and had you, you became Crosses too, by blood if not by name. Tom Keller knew this. He knew you were the grandchildren of his best friend. When your parents died, when I had to put you into the system to protect you, Tom and I made a pact. We would gather evidence. We would preserve it. And we would make sure that when you were old enough, strong enough, you would have the chance to bring Pike to justice. I bought this station not just to preserve evidence. I bought it because it was Tom's station. Because it was where your grandfather Thomas had worked, because it was the physical embodiment of everything our family believed in. You were never abandoned, Cole. You were being prepared, every hardship, every placement, every skill you learned. It was all leading you here, to this moment, to this fight. I could not fight it myself. I was too old, too compromised by the system. Tom could not fight it because Pike killed him. But I knew you would come. I knew you would be strong enough. The station is yours, not because I had nowhere else to leave it, but because it was always meant to be yours. Your family's legacy, your grandfather's legacy, your fight. Be brave, be strong, finish what we started. With all my love, Grandma Ruth. I read the letter 3 times. Then I called for Iris. We read it together, sitting on the floor of the evidence room where our grandmother had hidden 40 years of truth. We were not random, we were not abandoned, we were part of a plan that spanned generations, a family of people who stood up to power and paid the price. Tom Keller, Thomas Cross, Ruth Brennan, James and Mary Brennan, all of them fighting the same fight across 50 years. And now us, the last link in that chain, the ones who finally won. Iris was crying. So was I, but they were good tears, tears of understanding, of connection, of knowing finally where we came from and why. We were not orphans. We were the children of heroes. That night I stood outside the station under the Montana stars, the same stars that had watched generations of my family fight and die for justice. The same stars that would watch new generations grow up in a town where the water ran clean and the law meant something. Iris came and stood beside me. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had just taken the money and left?" she asked. "Every day." Do you regret staying? I looked at the building behind us, the lights glowing warm through the windows, the plaque beside the door, the mountain silhouette in the distance. Not for a second. She nodded, me neither. We stood together in the comfortable silence of people who had been through hell together and come out the other side. If you are watching this, if our story means something to you, I want you to know something. Home is not the place you are born. It is not the place where you are comfortable or where things are easy. Home is the place you fight for. It is the place where you plant your feet and say, this matters. These people matter. This ground matters, and I will not let it be taken. We inherited a rusted sheriff's station bought for $5 by a grandmother we barely remembered. We inherited a mystery, a tragedy, a 40-year-old crime that everyone said was unsolvable. But we also inherited something else, a legacy, a responsibility, a fight that had been passed down through generations of people who refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. We could have walked away. We should have walked away. Two teenagers with no money and no power against a man who had murdered dozens of people and gotten away with it for decades. But we did not walk away. We stood, we fought, and we won. Not because we were special, not because we were brave, but because the truth was on our side, because good people stood with us, because the law, when it works the way it is supposed to, is stronger than any amount of money or power or corruption. Vernon Pike is in a federal prison now. He will die there. His empire is gone. His name is synonymous with everything evil about unchecked power. The land he stole is being returned. The water he poisoned is being cleaned. The families he destroyed are being compensated. It is not enough. Nothing could ever be enough. But it is something. It is justice. And this station, this building where Sheriff Tom Keller died trying to do the right thing, it stands. It stands as a promise that the law still means something. That truth still matters. That ordinary people can still change the world if they are willing to fight for it. Every day, people come through these doors looking for help, for legal aid, for victim services, for someone to listen, for hope. And we give it to them, because that is what this place is now. Not a tomb, not a museum, a living, breathing reminder that justice is not dead. It just takes people willing to fight for it. My name is Cole Brennan. My sister is Iris. We are the grandchildren of heroes, the children of martyrs, and the inheritors of a legacy that we will spend the rest of our lives honoring. This sheriff's station is our home now, not because it is where we live, but because it is what we stand for. And we will keep standing, for as long as it takes, for as long as people need someone to stand with them. Because that is what home means. That is what justice means. That is what family means. Standing together, fighting together, winning together. The water remembers everything. The land remembers. The walls remember. And now, finally, we remember too. We remember what happens when good people stay silent. We remember what it costs to speak up. And we remember that justice delayed is not justice denied. It is just justice waiting for someone brave enough to fight for it. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing that truth still matters. And if you are facing your own fight, your own battle against power or corruption or injustice, know this: you are not alone. People like you, like us, like Tom Keller and Ruth Brennan and every person who has ever stood up when it was easier to sit down, we are all connected. We are all part of the same fight. Stand up, speak up, fight. The truth will set you free. But first, it will make you strong.